Chapter 391. In the middle layer of the ruins, there were many aquatic plants that grew from the floor of the upper layer. They were so dense that it looked like a jungle. Looking at the jungle through the mirror, walking in the empty middle layer was like walking on the edge of a temple, looking down at this sacred behemoth from below. Yin Nuashing and the others had been walking around the periphery of the ruins. In the middle, they saw many huge passageways that looked like city gates. Looking through these passageways, they could clearly see that it was still the blue sea. On the walls of the ruins, there were blurry pictures of gods and demons. The wriggling lines were like living creatures. Walking on the edge and looking down, they could even see the crack of the abyss. Strange, strong winds blew out of the crack and circulated endlessly in the cold bottom of the sea. When his palm touched the collapsed stone pillars, Yin Nuashing felt a cold aura coming from his palm. He couldn't help but shiver. The water element energy contained in the stone pillars had gradually condensed and sublimated into cold energy under the erosion of time. Not only the stone pillars, but even the ruins were like this. It was like an ice house emitting a cold aura everywhere. "Where's the ghost?" Yin Nuashing gently retracted his hand into the bag and shook it twice without leaving a trace. He turned his head to look at the worn-out statue behind him that only had a pair of feet left. He then looked at Mo Yinhua and asked, "A ghost that can be found so easily can't be considered a ghost." And Mo Yinhua smiled and looked to the side, fixing his gaze on a passageway that was about 100 meters away from them behind statue. He said, "It should be on the other side of the ruins. Let's go around it." Hearing this, Yin Nuashing nodded. Then he seemed to think of something and shook his head. He looked at the main body of the ruins not far away. They didn't find anything valuable in the middle layer. From useless cultivation methods to historical relics, there was nothing. Although it was possible that everything was piled up in the upper layer, there should be something in the middle layer. Perhaps it was inside the ruins. However, the body of the ruins was extraordinarily hard. Even Mo Yunhua's all-out attack couldn't leave a trace on it. Yin Nuashing also knocked it with a netherworld ruin sword without leaving a trace, but it didn't have the slightest effect. Although the result made them a little depressed, they were already mentally prepared for such an outcome. After all, this used to be the holy city of the merfolk. How could the building materials be so fragile? Like an archaeologist, Z couldn't help but laugh when she saw Yin Nuashing carefully observing the murals. The latter could only roll her eyes in response. "Let's go take a look at those so-called ghosts. That's also a scenery of the ruins, isn't it?" Yin Nuashing grinned and said something that made everyone shudder. Mo Yinhua nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. At this moment, he finally understood Yin Nuashing's character. His answer was almost the same as the answer of everyone who knew the latter. This guy was a heartless guy who was not afraid of anything. Regarding this choice, Xian and Yuan, she could only sigh helplessly. Usually, Yin Nuashing also took them to some very dangerous places to play. Perhaps he was already mentally prepared for this result. Anyway, the latter would go wherever it was dangerous. He could even be described as audacious. After coming to a conclusion, Mo Yinhua could only wave his hand and admit that he was unlucky. He could have met anyone, but he just had to meet this guy at this time. If he had decided to enter the ruins the day before, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. The group walked carefully into the passage. Mo Yinhua took the lead, and the rest of the people formed a circle, surrounding Yin Nuashing and the others in the middle. Their breaths were restrained in their bodies, and not a single bit leaked out. However, judging from the way they clenched their fists, they seemed to have switched to a combat stance. There was no darkness in the passage at all. The bright light was enough for Yin Nuashing and the others to clearly see the panoramic view inside. There was no fork in the passage, and there was no path leading to the interior of the building. The high ceiling was still covered with green moss, and clusters of seaweed hung down sporadically. At the bottom of the seaweed, there was an orange-yellow, fruit-like thing growing. It remained motionless in the gentle current. That's the ghost fruit. According to legend, eating this fruit will make one's soul change. As for how it will change, well, I don't know. Seeing Yin Nuashing and the others stop to look, Mo Yinhua explained, and then said, "But it's not ripe yet. A ripe ghost fruit is red. It looks like it will take another 1,000 years to ripen. Will eating it now make one's soul change, or will one directly die?" Well, it's more or less like that. Don't be greedy. This change is in the bad direction. It won't produce any good changes. Zi also continued to say. Yin Nuoxing could only smile awkwardly and give up the idea of picking it. However, the ghost fruit is a good thing for refining weapons, especially for refining soul tools. It's a pity that it's not ripe yet. Zi smiled. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. It had nothing to do with him that it wasn't ripe yet. It would take 1,000 years for it to ripen. He would come back when he remembered it. For now, he would just ignore it. This passage was 1,000 meters long. 1 or 2 clusters of hanging water plants could be seen every few dozen meters. Not every cluster of water plants had ghost fruit growing on it. There were more than 100 of them. Moreover, 1 or 2 ghost fruits had grown to the size of a head, and they could even see traces of red. Obviously, this fruit was about to ripen. However, even so, Mo Yinhua said that it would still take more than 100 years, but it already had the initial medicinal efficacy. The further they walked, the more water plants drooped down. They were piled up in bunches, but there weren't many fruits. What they did have were orange-yellow fruits. Some of them even looked like they had just grown out. Their overall appearance was a kind of green-yellow. Rather than saying that it hasn't grown, it should be said that it has been plucked. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and said, "What do you mean?" Everyone was stunned. They all turned to look at him and asked. Yin Nuoxing suddenly felt a little embarrassed when he was focused on by a bunch of gazes. However, he still stretched out his hand and pointed to a hanging water plant without any ghost fruit. He said, "Look at the bottom of the grass. There's a stem there. Does it look like something once grew out of that stem and then was plucked?" "A little." Mo Yinhua nodded and said, "It should have been plucked by someone who went in before, right? But the people who went in before didn't come out." Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and said, "Moreover, wasn't there a barrier before? How did they get in?" "Because that barrier prevents people from going out, not going in. Moreover, people can only go in but not out. Before the barrier dissipates, those who go and can't come out," Mo Yinhua said. "But you didn't see anyone outside the barrier. Didn't you say that even Emperor God powerhouses went in? Those powerhouses can last for a long time even if they don't eat or drink. But the rumor is that it was only for nearly 1,000 years. Let's say that those Emperor God powerhouses became Emperor God ghosts. Did you see any ghosts?" Yin Nuoxing frowned and asked again. Silence. After hearing this sentence, everyone fell silent, especially Mo Yinhua and the others. At this time, their entire bodies were stiff. The latter's face was still the same as when he heard this because they really didn't see anything outside the ruins. They didn't even see anything that came out of the ruins. This. Mo Yinhua rubbed his face awkwardly. He couldn't say anything for a long time. It seemed that he didn't know either. Maybe it has accumulated somewhere. When he said this, he wasn't sure. There were thousands of resentful spirits trapped in the sealed barrier. When the barrier dissipated, they should have tried their best to escape, right? Could it be that there was something that prevented them from escaping? Forget it. Let's ignore this question. Let's continue moving forward. Seeing that he was sweating profusely, Yin Nuoxing didn't ask anything more. She waved her hand and pushed Mo Yinhua forward. When the latter heard this, he breathed a sigh of relief. He still didn't fully understand what was going on in the ruins. Asking so many questions at once, he could only laugh. Passing through the dense aquatic grass forest, in the distance, an exceptionally strong light shone through the dense aquatic grass and shone into Yin Nuoxing and the others' vision. The dazzling light was like a sun hanging at the bottom of the sea, making them unable to open their eyes. They could only barely see an arched shadow. When they adapted to the stimulation brought by the strong light and opened their eyes again, the moment they saw the scene in front of them, even their breaths were strangled. What appeared in his field of vision was a vast expanse of blue sea water. On the empty platform, there were thick marks. The 3 supporting pillars had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only rubble on the ground. There seemed to have been a fierce battle here, and even half of the wall had been hollowed out. However, what was even more shocking was the scene at the edge of the ruins. Thousands of souls wandered around the periphery of the ruins. Under the strong light, their faces were revealed clearly. As strong masters of their generation in the past, they were now trapped in this dark place. They had lost their bodies, and even their rationality had been annihilated by time. Waves of soul shock waves that stung their souls spurted out from their mouths, causing the sea to shake violently. Boom! A huge amount of soul energy gushed out from Mo Yinhua's body, resisting the shock waves that had gathered together. A wave of soul energy collided with thousands of souls, causing the surrounding floor to crack. However, the soul energy wasn't pure. For a pure Netherworld King expert, it was more than enough to resist it. However, the energy contained negative emotions, causing everyone's state of mind to shake a few times. Those present weren't people who would be easily affected. Therefore, although there were a lot of negative emotions, it didn't cause any real impact on them. Those were all powerful masters of their generation. Their names shook the four seas. I didn't expect that they would end up like this. Is it a tragedy, or is it an inevitability? Mo Yinhua took a deep breath. He casually glanced around and saw some famous people that he had heard of before. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. They are really gathered together. Moreover, it's not a small number. It's not tens of thousands. It's more than 100,000. Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. With such a large number, they would be scared to death if they didn't fight. Although it was a little exaggerated, there are still 10,000 souls. Why are they here and not leaving? Aren't they outside the ruins? Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest as she asked. These souls didn't exist in the ruins. They were at the edge of the ruins, above the sea abyss. Even if there was a barrier around the ruins, it had nothing to do with them. This was because they weren't in the ruins. However, they were gathered here and weren't willing to leave. At this moment, those resentful souls seemed to have sensed the arrival of the crowd. They circled around the ruins, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They roared and howled, wanting to rush in. However, when they approached the boundary of the ruins, they stopped moving forward. They only stared at the crowd with their bell-sized, blood-red eyes. That should be related to the thing above our heads, right? Mo Yinhua nodded. He stretched out his hand and pointed directly above. He raised his head and said slowly. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing also raised her head suspiciously. On the floor of the upper level of the ruins, on the ceiling of the middle level, there was a bronze lamp hanging. It was ordinary and looked like the kind that could be found on the streets. The wall of the lamp was engraved with a strange pattern, and the wick seemed to be burning with an eternal flame. It was bright and moving. When it shone on the body, it made the soul feel lazy. Lamp! Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Bronze lamp? What's so strange about it? Well, if I'm not wrong, this should be the soul-suppressing lamp. Chapter 392. Soul-calming lamp? Yin Nuoxing murmured. From the name, combined with the situation in front of him, he already knew what it was used for. The soul-suppressing lamp, as the name implied, was used to suppress souls. However, at this moment, in a situation where no one was controlling it, it was only spontaneously suppressing the tens of thousands of souls to prevent them from running out and causing trouble. Although this was just Yin Nuoxing's wishful thinking, the truth was almost the same. To put it simply, the soul-calming lamp was not used to prevent those resentful souls from going out and causing trouble. It was just accidentally activated and then suppressed these resentful souls on its own. This soul-calming lamp is a relic left behind by a deity. That deity studied souls all his life and knew them like the back of his hand. In the field of souls, few people could compare to him. Unfortunately, this deity disappeared in the ancient times and is suspected to have fallen. It is said that the last time he appeared in the world was in the Ganyuan region, Mo Yinhua said. However, even if he didn't die at that time, he doesn't exist now. It is said that he left behind many mysterious things. One of them is this soul-calming lamp. That deity used this lamp to suppress countless deities with the same strength as him. It was effortless for him to achieve his fame. I didn't expect to see his face today, Mo Yinhua sighed. In other words, this lamp is an ownerless object. Yin Nuoxing smiled slightly. The deity's weapon should be very high in grade, at least higher than the weapons used by ordinary deities. Looking at Yin Nuoxing's expression, he knew that he had his eyes on this weapon again. After all, cultivating the spiritual godly body required continuous accommodation of spiritual objects. A weapon was the best choice. In addition to his own harsh requirements, he was afraid that it was the most difficult godly body to cultivate. Now that a high-grade weapon had appeared, it was normal for him to be tempted. Well, it is an ownerless object. Mo Yinhua nodded, and then sensed that something was wrong. When he turned his head, he saw Yin Nuoxing's gradually widening smile. He suddenly shuddered and quickly said, "Little brother, don't be rash. The soul-calming lamp is suppressing those souls. If you remove the soul-calming lamp, I don't know what will happen." At this time, the soul-calming lamp was emitting eternal light. The direction of the light was not elsewhere, but the place where the resentful souls gathered. Although the light was only a thin layer and looked very fragile, it blocked and suppressed tens of thousands of souls. If the soul-calming lamp was removed, the souls that had lost their restraint, would they be the first ones to tear them apart? This was what Mo Yinhua thought in his heart. It was not an unreasonable worry. Well, Yin Nuoxing also knew what he was thinking, so he also looked at the group of wriggling souls in the distance with a little worry. He was also worried that this group of guys would rush out and tear them apart. Although he had the Netherworld Ruined sword, there were many former masters among the resentful souls. Those powerful existences were comparable to gods. Although only a soul was left now, they could not be underestimated. Who cares? We'll talk about it when something happens. A second ago, he was still worried about this and that, but the next second, he completely ignored all of it. His change of mind was so fast that everyone staggered and almost fell to the ground. Why did you think so much just now? Mo Yinhua could only sigh when he saw that Yin Nuoxing was determined to take the soul-suppressing lamp. Although he wanted to persuade Yin Nuoxing's authority was much greater than his. He had to cooperate with Yin Nuoxing. Therefore, when Yin Nuoxing was about to make a move, he was also prepared to fight. Be careful. Yin Nuoxing took 2 steps back and quietly retreated to Xian's side. Ling Hongjian slipped down from his sleeve and then stuffed it into Xian's sleeve. He reminded him softly. Xian held Ling Hongjian and twirled it twice. He winked at Mei Mao and said with a smile, "Shouldn't I be the one reminding you to be careful?" It was wrong for the person at the front to remind the person at the back, no matter how he thought about it, right? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He felt that it seemed to be the case. His handsome face could not help but blush. He quickly turned his face away and muttered, "I was just saying, yes, no matter what dangerous thing someone does, the first thing he does is to remind little Xian and throw Ling Hongjian or the Netherworld Ruined sword over. He really has ulterior motives." Yes. Zai laughed. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes when he heard this. Then, he thought about it carefully. He really could not refute this. Every time there was danger, he would put Xian and the others in a safe position and then do it himself. Well, there's no problem for a boy to protect a girl, but your way of protecting her is a little strange. It's a little like a father protecting his daughter. So I did not give up. What kind of analogy is that? Yin Nuoxing almost choked to death when he heard this sentence. That's not right. I should say that you protect everyone like this. Yes, that's right. Ignoring his statement, Zai thought for a while and said, "So, don't you think that you're a little overprotective?" Connecting the analogy just now, this is doting, right? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He opened his mouth but found that he could not say anything. "Let's go get the soul-suppressing lamp," Yin Nuoxing said calmly, and his body floated up. Seeing that he had forcefully changed the topic, Ziyi did not pursue the matter any further because the former knew the answer better than anyone else. It was just that he had not thought of a safe way to resolve it. However, perhaps now was not the time to discuss this. Yin Nuoxing floated towards it under the light of the soul suppressing lamp. He felt a strange feeling born in his soul. At first, it was just a little numb, as if hundreds of ants were crawling on his soul. The numb and itchy feeling was unbearable, and it gave him goosebumps all over his body. Itchy. Yin Nuoxing's throat moved. He tried his best to not do those actions. His handsome face was red and cold sweat was flowing out. Moreover, the closer he got to the soul-suppressing lamp, the more intense the numbness and itchiness became. In the end, the numbness and itchiness turned into pain, as if a drill was drilling holes in his body. Even the power it emits on its own is to this extent. Yin Nuoxing twisted his body, and the bones all over his body made a crisp, crackling sound. The painful and itchy feeling from his body constantly stimulated his nerves, and he could not help but reach out and scratch his body. What's wrong? Yuanshi could not help but ask when he saw Yin Nuoxing twisting like a worm. The people who had been paying attention to Yin Nuoxing also noticed that something was wrong with him, but they did not act rashly. Although the former looked very uncomfortable, he still insisted on moving forward. Moreover, in this unclear situation, if everyone plunged into it, it might stimulate the soul-suppressing lamp. At that time, it would not be impossible to suppress this group of people directly. The first person to see Yin Nuoxing's movements was Mo Yinhua. He had the highest cultivation level among the people present. He could clearly see the former's subtle movements, and even knew why he was uncomfortable. However, since Yin Nuoxing did not call for help, he could not act at will. Just when everyone was staring and looking at each other, Yin Nuoxing was already very close to the soul-suppressing lamp. At this time, his movements could not be described as twisting. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to say that he was dancing. His hands kept scratching his body. If they were in the air, they might be able to hear the sound of his nails rubbing against his skin. Bang! As the distance between them got closer and closer, they also saw that Yin Nuoxing's movements had changed. He was no longer scratching, but he was hitting his body hard. Even across the sea, they could hear the dull sound of his body hitting his body. F***CK. No wonder those vengeful spirits don't dare to come close. Yin Nuoxing almost scratched his skin because of the soreness and pain all over his body. His soul was protected by his body. Although the soul-suppressing lamp could directly cause harm to his soul, it would be blocked by his body. However, he was already feeling so uncomfortable. For those souls that were directly exposed, this light could be considered as poison. Hurry up, Exine, and I can't stand it anymore. When Yin Nuoxing was moving forward with difficulty, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. This surprised Yin Nuoxing. Even Ziyi and Lan Exin, who were hiding in his soul, could not stand it anymore. How powerful was this lamp to attack his soul through his soul? Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Although he could use the light element to rush over this distance, Mo Yinhua and the others were still below. He was not so close to Mo Yinhua that he could let go of everything. Although Mo Yinhua was now respectful because he had He Hai's token in his hand, they were thousands of meters underwater and isolated from the world. No one knew what would happen. What if someone found out that he had received a spirit? To be honest, he really did not know, and he did not want to know, because he was unwilling to use the light element. The last 10 meters of distance seemed to have passed by an era. Yin Nuoxing's hand finally touched the wall of the soul-suppressing lamp. When his fingers touched something, he suddenly opened his eyes. He saw that his hand had touched the soul-suppressing lamp. Buzz! The moment he opened his eyes, the soul-suppressing lamp suddenly bloomed with a bright light that was enough to illuminate the entire East Sea. The dazzling light made everyone turn their faces away and cover their eyes with their hands. At the same time, some strange thoughts and emotions reverberated in their minds, giving them a fright. Woo! Woo-woo! Roar! The moment the light flashed, the souls wandering outside the ruins suddenly rioted. Low cries, roars, resentment, and anger echoed in the bottom of the sea. These voices rang directly in the minds of Yin Nuoxing and the others. Scam! It's all a scam. Tens of billions of years of resentment. All of this is wrong. When I return to the world, the heavens will be destroyed. Chaos. A series of mixed and clueless voices reverberated in their minds, overlapping each other like a few giant bells ringing in their heads. Yin Nuashing and the two people in the souls felt a buzzing sound in their heads. Countless emotions turned into a spear and charged at them, almost causing them to lose their minds. The emotions contained in the voices flowed continuously to Yin Nuashing, making him experience those negative emotions. Sadness, anger, and despair filled his heart. The emotions that he had nowhere to release surged to his head. Woo! The sudden influx of emotions caused Yin Nuashing's head to hurt intensely. At the same time, when those emotions entered Yin Nuashing's mind, a ball of light in the depths of his soul began to fluctuate at an extremely high frequency. Yin Nuashing was shocked. He had never seen such a thing in his soul. It was so strange. How did it come in? Or rather, where did it come from? Little star. Two horrified cries exploded at the same time. One came from his soul, and the other came from the real world. He wanted to respond, but his body couldn't move, and he couldn't open his mouth. Buzz. In his mind, the fluctuating ball of light expanded countless times in an instant and swallowed Yin Nuashing's soul in one breath. Chapter 393. The so-called memory is a small fragment bound to the soul. Then just seal the soul this life, the next life, until eternity. But the price is too great after doing so much and ushering in hope. In the end, you were betrayed. Is it worth it? Only me. I am your most sincere friend. You can't protect this entire world. Fight until the end. Only you and I are left. After endless reincarnation, what's left in the end is just a handful of yellow sand, a joke. With heaven and earth as breath, the world as heart. You can't surpass eternity. No god can live past an era. Legends, miracles, they are all meant to be surpassed. In the end, it's just a sigh. Have I failed, so what? I didn't let myself down. There are things that even deities can't do. Didn't you boast of being an omnipotent god? Traitor, destroyer, you monster. You have always lived in an illusion and never existed in reality. You are the nightmare, the darkness, the wisp of chaos that was born at the beginning of heaven and earth. Your burden is too heavy. No one can bear it. In other words, it was you who unscrupulously changed that child's fate that led to such an ending? Ha! I have never heard of such a ridiculous thing that a human life can affect history. But I don't regret it. No matter how many times, no matter when, I will still do it. Even if I do so, will history be overwritten again? So what if you are a natural-born legend? You are just a small wave of sand in time, haha. No matter how big the ripple, it will eventually return to peace. What if you can stop the flow of the river? Fate will change, the script will be rewritten, the stage will be reset, and you will no longer exist. That is light, that is time, that is your power. Seize it, correct the wrong history, and let it return to its original path. Die for a world that destroyed you. Are you kidding me? Is it worth it? If you do this, you will be destroyed by your own power. You want to kill him for something he didn't do, but would do. Those who go against the heavens will be punished endlessly. Even deities can't avoid it. Then I will surpass all the rules. Boss, run. Brother, old friend, don't be silly. No matter how hard you try, you can't change the facts. Let bygones be bygones. You carry everyone's hope. You can't die here. Go chase after your own future. Wait, get lost. You damned idiot. Get lost. What does my death have to do with you? Don't go looking for history that shouldn't exist. One day, you'll regret touching something you shouldn't have. Don't touch it. That history cannot be uncovered. The entire world will be thrown into chaos, and the era will change once again. Fate? That was just a joke. I'm not bound by anything. Reverence, fear. Rather than being remembered by others with such thoughts, I might as well pretend that I never existed. We don't know, we don't think, we don't understand. We don't think, we don't judge, we don't make a move. We are just bystanders, overlooking a game of chess. Many noisy voices sounded in his head. They were untraceable and could not be connected. They seemed to be narrating many things, but he did not know what had happened. In a daze, something flashed in his mind. Some images were about to break free from their restraints and rush out, but they did not appear in the end. These are my memories? What he saw in his field of vision was a group of blurry images. Each image was very blurry, and he could not see clearly what was happening. He could not even see clearly who was inside. Perhaps these could not even be considered memories, not even fragments. They were just bits and pieces of information that had not been eliminated in his mind. Ziyi, Yin Nuoxing called out softly. He wanted Ziyi to come out and help him look at these memory fragments. Perhaps she could help him repair them. However, after waiting for a long time, he did not wait for the latter to appear. Only then did he realize that this place might be in the depths of his own soul. It was impossible for anyone else to step into this place. He had to look at these fragments himself. It's been a long time since something like this happened. Yin Nuoxing sighed softly. It had been a long time since he had seen his memories recover. The last time was when he was in Divine Sky City. However, it was no wonder. It was not easy to find a place that he had been to before. He did not know where he had been before. Even if he went there again, he would not be able to recover as he wished. This time, it was probably a coincidence that his soul had been stimulated, which caused this scene to happen. Suddenly, the images in front of him disappeared. Yin Nuoxing's surroundings became empty and pitch black, as if he was standing in the void. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He looked around in the pitch-black surroundings, but he could not see anything. He thought that he was in the sea of memories, but he did not find the core of the two memory chains, nor did he see the memory chains formed by images. If I am the sea of memories, Ziyi should be able to come out. Then where am I in the soul? Yin Nuoxing murmured. The soul was a mysterious thing. Ordinary people would not be able to study it thoroughly even if they spent their entire lives studying it. If one entered someone's soul rashly without guidance, it was not impossible for one to get lost. Scratching his head, Yin Nuoxing tried to break free from his soul. In other words, he was trying to wake up. However, no matter how he tried, no matter how he closed and opened his eyes, all he saw was a pitch-black space. It was so dark that he broke out in cold sweat. I won't get lost in my own soul like this, right? Yin Nuoxing laughed bitterly. This feeling of not being able to break free was like entering someone else's soul. He had no power or direction. He could only watch quietly. He could not even control himself. If he really got lost in his own soul, he would probably be laughed at by the world. He had never heard of anyone getting lost in their own soul. Just as he was worrying, a speck of light appeared in his field of vision. Although it was only a very small speck, it was unusually bright in this dark and lonely place. It made him turn his gaze. Just as he was about to walk towards the speck of light flickered. After a while, the light suddenly exploded. The dazzling light enveloped Yin Nuoxing, causing him to habitually close his eyes. As Yin Nuoxing closed his eyes, a gentle breeze suddenly blew against his face. The gentle touch caused his tense heart to gradually relax. Yin Nuoxing slowly opened his eyes. What appeared in his field of vision was a lush green grassland. He could not see the end of it. The only thing he could see was the green that extended to the end of his field of vision. Yin Nuoxing stood on the grassland that reached his waist. He was like a tiny ant that did not attract any attention. Grassland. Looking at the vast grassland, Yin Nuoxing could not help but take a light breath. He looked back. The grassland swayed like a green wave. A wind that smelled of mud and grass flew from afar and licked Yin Nuoxing's face. Oh! Yin Nuoxing looked around and realized that it was indeed a grassland. There was nothing here. Then now, he took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Suddenly, he grabbed his head and shouted in panic. What the hell is this? Ah, ah, ah. A mournful wail reverberated in the empty grassland. A moment later, Yin Nuoxing calmed down. He looked around again. Then, with a thought, he took out the Netheruin's sword. When his hand touched the hilt of the sword, he was stunned for a moment. Then he understood. The Netherruin's sword had fused with his soul. It was not too surprising that it would appear in his soul. He held the Netherruin's sword in his hand. The tip of the sword touched the ground gently. His palm pressed on the hilt and shook it a few times. When he was sure that it was stable, he slowly moved his hand away. Crack! The Netherruin sword landed on the grass. Yin Nuashing looked at the hilt and nodded. Then let's go this way. The Netherruin's sword. You want to use me as a guide? Are you tired of living? He could not fly in the soul world. Yin Nuashing had already tried it. He could only use his body to push away the green grass that was as tall as his waist and walk over with difficulty. He would not leave a single trace of himself wherever he passed. He didn't know how long he walked. His vision changed from a patch of emerald green to another patch of emerald green. It was an endless grassland. There weren't even any mountains in the distance. Yin Nuashing used the Netherruin's sword to change directions 3 times. Although he didn't turn in a circle, he still saw dazzling green. Am I in the southern plains? There aren't even any mountains in this godforsaken place. There's even a sun in this godforsaken place. I'm a creature of darkness. Damn the sun. With a heavy sigh, Yin Nuashing wiped the non-existent sweat from his forehead. He collapsed on the grass and crushed the grass behind him. The warm sunlight shone on his body, causing the lazy factor in his bones to come out again. If the Netherruin's sword hadn't knocked him, he would have chosen to fall asleep. I don't know what will happen if my soul falls asleep in my soul, the Netherruin's sword said with a sinister sneer. Startled by this cold voice, Yin Nuashing suddenly jumped up. After coming back to his senses, he narrowed his eyes and stared at her bitterly. For some reason, when he heard this laughter, the image of Ziye's sinister smile automatically appeared in his mind. Yin Nuashing walked aimlessly as the Netherruin's sword pushed him along. No, he was being pushed by a sword. He was like a walking corpse. Wah! He walked like this until Yin Nuashing inexplicably fell down a slope. His narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and what he saw was an emerald green that was magnified at full speed. The moment he opened his eyes and closed them in fear, his entire body rolled down like a gourd. During this time, he could even hear a series of F *CK, F *CK meow, and so on. Strange cries. The Netherruin's sword watched as Yin Nuashing rolled from the top of the slope to the bottom. It couldn't help but move its scabbard. At first, it only felt that the resistance in front of it was gone. Then, it heard a series of sorrowful cries. Meow. After Yin Nuashing rolled to the bottom, he fell upside down. His 2 arms and legs were still twitching above the ground. Are you all right, little star? The Netherruin's sword couldn't bear to see Yin Nuashing like this. He quickly went forward and pulled out the black onion. When he saw Yin Nuashing's eyes rolled back and his face covered in dirt, he couldn't help but laugh dryly. I'm pushing you from behind. It's normal that you can't see the road. Speaking of which, you really are sleeping on the side of the road. How can you do that? The Netherruin sword's idea at this time was to find a random topic to talk about, so he started lecturing Yin Nuashing. It's my fault. Yin Nuashing groaned as he felt wronged. He casually patted the dust off his body and looked up at the place where the ground had suddenly sunk. There was no grass here. What was exposed was brownish-yellow soil. The basin had sunk about 100 meters, but it was obvious that they hadn't really reached the bottom yet. The ground in front of them was still sinking. This place was like a buffer platform. This was a step basin. Yin Nuashing and the others stopped at the first level. There was still about 1 kilometer to go down. At the bottom of the basin, or rather, in front of them, a tree appeared. It was a big blue tree. A tree? Chapter 394. The dark blue tree stood at the bottom of the basin, emitting a dim and weak blue light. The branches and leaves were like a huge umbrella that spread out for thousands of feet. The wind that blew from afar swayed the arms of the big tree, and a light rustling sound reverberated between heaven and earth. A delicate fragrance, following the wind, caressed Yin Nuashing's face. Tree, a blue tree. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. Even if she saw a tree in other places, she wouldn't have any reaction. The problem was that in this damn place where birds didn't lay eggs and there were only weeds, A tree was a bit of a problem. Let me think. Tree, a blue tree. In the ranking of heaven and earth treasures, the first is the God's Spirit tree. The second is the heaven's phoenix blood tree. The third is the heaven's will tree. And the fourth is... Yin Nuashing pondered. You don't even know what it is. Just say it. Why are you still pondering over it? So a blue tree. Yin Nuashing's forehead was sweating, but she still pretended to be deep in thought. Turtle, there you go. The nether void sword patted his head and stood in front of Yin Nuashing, looking at the tree that was emitting a dim light. It seemed to be thinking about something. Seeing her like this, Yin Nuashing could only stick out her tongue and stand to the side obediently. I don't know either. After a long while, the Su Ming sword sighed. Just as Yin Nuashing thought that she had come up with a conclusion and turned his gaze away, the former's words were like a muffled thunder that struck Yin Nuashing's head and face. Yin Nuashing's eyeballs turned into charcoal. Su Ming couldn't help but laugh out loud when he saw Yin Nuashing grimacing in pain. Seeing that Yin Nuashing's face was as dark as the starry sky, Su Ming laughed dryly and hurriedly said, "Well, don't worry. Although I don't know what kind of tree this is, I know that a strange flower grows under this tree." "What flower?" Yin Nuashing asked with a dark face, bewildered. "This kind of flower." Su Ming smiled. However, when she was about to tell him, she paused. She thought for a while and then said with a smile, "Guess? Let me give you a hint. This flower is what you need." Upon hearing those two words, Yin Nuashing immediately spat out a mouthful of gloomy air. Then she was startled. "What I need?" "Yeah. When you were discussing it with Yuan, she told you about it," said Su Ming. "Big sister Yuan said that?" Yin Nuashing wrinkled his nose. Although many years had passed since then, the mention of this name still made his mind churn. His memories of her appeared in front of him. Combining these few sentences, he suddenly recalled something. A lifetime of flowers. Yin Nuashing's solemn voice and Su Ming's chuckle rang out at the same time, causing the air here to show signs of freezing. A lifetime of flowers, ranked 40th on the list of treasures of heaven and earth. In the ancient book, there was only one sentence. It can remind people of a past and present life. There was no more information about it. Its place of birth was unknown, its time of birth was unknown, and its conditions of birth were unknown. This strange flower had once appeared in Yin Nuashing and Yu Yin's discussions. However, because of its illusory nature, they had no choice but to give up on pursuing this flower. "Are you kidding me? There's a lifetime of flowers here?" Yin Nuashing swallowed. Although he trusted Su Ming more than himself, he was still a little suspicious when he heard her say that. After all, this thing didn't make sense at all. "Yeah, but to be more specific, it's in this place that you see, not in front of you." Su Ming moved his scabbard, then said, "The lifespan of a lifetime of flowers is 100,000 years. They take 100,000 years to grow, but the bud only blooms for half an hour. After half an hour, the flower will wither and turn into a seed. It will either fly away from this place, stay behind, or be buried in the ground. After 100,000 years, it will bloom again. 100,000 years of growth, just to bloom for half an hour?" Yin Nuashing muttered repeatedly. 100,000 years was an unimaginably long period of time. Whether one was a human or a god, it wasn't an easy thing to pass through. This long period of time was a kind of flower cycle. It tenaciously grew, tenaciously broke through its shackles, all for the moment of blooming, and then quietly faded away in the extreme. The lifetime flower itself is a legendary flower. It's said that the moment it blooms, there's a 1 in a million chance, or even a 1 in 10 million chance, that it will evolve into another kind of flower, the life soul flower. It will bloom with the most dazzling colors that can make the world fall for it. However, the probability is pitifully small. There aren't many lifetime flowers in the first place. Su Ming sighed and said regretfully, "The life soul flower was a divine flower ranked 12th on the heavenly materials and earthly treasures ranking. According to legend, it was a strange life form that bloomed at the extreme and died at the extreme. To put it simply, it was the ultimate sublimation of a lifetime flower. Legend had it that the life soul flower could sublimate a person's soul to the extreme, and it could also transform the soul, giving the wielder a chance at a new life. They've worked so hard to grow for countless years, just to let themselves walk towards inevitable death. Yin Nuashing sighed. His heart was very complicated. He didn't know whether to sigh at their tenacity or feel sorry for them. Was it worth it? No, it's not death. It's a new life. Whether it's the lifetime flower or the life soul flower, when it blooms at its brightest, it will turn back into a seed and start a new life. This process has been repeated countless times, countless times, countless times. The nether void sword shook as if shaking its head. Suddenly, Yin Nuashing thought of something. Putting the two flowers aside, at the very beginning, it was Su Ming who had recognized it and said that the lifetime flower would be born under this strange tree. Right? I'm not fooling you. It's not my intuition either. Of course, this tree has nothing to do with these two flowers. That deep blue tree isn't a tree. It's the form of a lifetime flower. The nether void sword said faintly. Yin Nuashing was shocked. Such a big tree was the form of a lifetime flower? Did he hear it wrong? Was his brain not working well? I didn't hear it wrong. The lifetime flower grows like this. However, I should say that this tree is similar to a root. It only became this way to better absorb energy. However, the real part is less than 2 meters long. It's under the tree's shade, near the root. Of course, this kind of tree has a name, but I don't know it. Su Ming acted like an encyclopedia and explained in detail to the confused Yin Nuashing. Anyway, let's go down and take a look first. The nether void sword shook. Seeing that Yin Nuashing was still in a daze, it snorted softly and pushed him down. Yin Nuashing was immersed in a pile of knowledge and didn't come back to his senses until he felt his body tilting at a strange angle. He forced himself to come back to his senses. What he saw was a rapidly enlarging emerald green in front of him. Meow. In the desolate wilderness, a mournful meow came from a cat. Don't act cute. Even I want to pinch you. The nether void sword slid down the 1,000-meter-long slope and arrived in front of Yin Nuashing. It saw him curled up with his two claws in front of his chest and an aggrieved look on his face. The scabbard almost flew out of his hand. What a cute act. At the bottom of the basin was a round-shaped brownish-red ground that was thousands of meters long and wide. Only the trees were surrounded by lush green grass. The towering lifetime flower tree was a little further away from them. Its dark blue trunk and leaves seemed to be one. One could clearly see that the enormous trunk was no different from an ordinary tree. It was hard to believe that this was a flower and not a tree. Under the tree, there was something shrouded in colorful light. Upon closer inspection, one could see many branches extending from the bottom of the colorful light all the way to the ground. Those branches were faintly flickering with a faint colorful light. Those colors were transmitted from the top of the tree. In other words, the spreading branches and leaves were absorbing energy and transmitting it to the lifetime flower like nutrients. This is the lifetime flower. Yin Nuashing scratched his head as he observed the glowing object from a close distance with a nether void sword. He couldn't even see the flower's appearance, let alone bloom. He couldn't even see its petals. It hasn't taken shape yet. It still needs a long time, the nether void sword said. The nether void sword said, this ball of light is the space where the life flower will be born in the future. Right now, it hasn't even formed a bud yet. Only half of its life cycle has passed. It seems like this tree was formed recently. Yin Nuashing curled his lips. He walked around the glowing object and glanced at the nether void sword. Then, he carefully reached out a hand and gently poked at the glowing object. When Yin Nuashing's hand reached out, it passed through the glowing object without any resistance. It was as if the space they existed in was different from the space of a lifetime flower. It's still in another world. It's not a physical space. Yin Nuashing muttered as he slowly withdrew his hand. You only realized it now? The nether void sword looked as if he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. He said with some astonishment, you should have known from the beginning. Didn't I say that you're drifting in your own soul? Right now, you're in the spiritual world that you once created. I know. I just said that. Yin Nuashing said stubbornly, nodding. Come on. Oh, it seems like I'm early. As they spoke, a magnetic voice suddenly sounded from behind them. The woman and the sword jumped in fright. They quickly turned around and saw a person in a bright white robe slowly walking toward the embryonic form of a lifetime flower. His entire body was a little too bright. His long hair hung down from both sides of his face and was blown by the breeze, blocking his face. They couldn't see his face clearly, but they could recognize that he was a young man. The young man was holding something in his hands. Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing couldn't see it clearly. When they saw him walk toward them, Yin Nuashing instinctively grabbed the nether void sword and took 2 steps back, even though she knew that they were just bystanders. The young man walked around the glowing object twice, his hand constantly stroking the object in his hands. When he stopped, he chuckled. There's still 50,000 years left. It seems too early, but there's no other way. This life is about to end? There's no other way. The young man sighed. He walked in front of the lifetime flower and slowly knelt down. He gently and carefully dug up the grass in front of him and buried the object in his arms. He then restored the place to its original state. It didn't even look like it had just been dug up. After burying the object, the young man didn't hurry to leave. He knelt in front of the lifetime flower and closed his eyes slightly, as if he was waiting for something. Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing were confused. Although they were curious about what he had buried, they couldn't see it. Oh, forget it. After a long time, the young man sighed and looked at the lifetime flower. He then put his hands together and prayed. After a while, he opened his eyes and smiled gently. He muttered to himself, "Although it's very irresponsible of me to say this," after stretching, the young man slowly stood up and turned around. His slender hair fluttered in the wind, revealing his covered face. It was a very beautiful face, with a hint of femininity and masculinity. Girls couldn't help but be jealous. 2 long eyebrows adorned his face, adding a hint of natural arrogance, but it didn't make him look overbearing. The moment Yin Nuashing and the Nether Void Sword saw this face, they almost choked on their saliva. Yin Nuashing stared at the young man with her dead fish eyes. Or rather, she stared at the face that was almost identical to her own. Then, I'll leave all of this to you in the future. Chapter 395. You will definitely see this scene. That's why I'm saying it here. Even though to others, I'm just talking to myself. You want to ask me why I know that you can see this scene? It's because you are me from the future. You are looking at what you have experienced. I have engraved this scene in your soul. Sooner or later, you will wake up. As for whether it will be sooner or later, it's up to you to decide. There's nothing else to say. If you have the ability, come to this place, find this scene in your memory, and find what you have buried. That's it. There's nothing else special. Your story is too long. It's better for you to see it yourself. Well, I guess you will be half dead from exhaustion. If you can, go to the 9 Elements Temple. It seems that our father has a good relationship with them. Speaking of which, I haven't seen my father since I grew up. It doesn't seem very rational to leave this matter to the me from the future. Forget it. The young man looked at Yin Nuashing. To be exact, he was looking in the direction of Yin Nuashing. There was no one else in the place where he used to be. It was just that Yin Nuashing happened to be standing in this place. Although his words were directed at Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded. His jaw almost dropped because of the shock. At this moment, even he, who boasted of his strong willpower, heard the sound of his psychological defense collapsing. What kind of situation is this? Me from the previous life? If you asked him whether he believed in his previous life or this life, he would believe it. However, he never thought that he would actually see himself from his previous life, even though this was just a fragment of his memory. What kind of shocking words are you saying so calmly? Seeing the young man, who was himself from the previous life, speaking with a faint smile, Yin Nuashing's face twitched a few times. He couldn't help but want to beat him up. Hey, I've captured a little star from my previous life. The Netherworld ruins, sword chuckled. Yin Nuashing's face was full of black lines. There were too many things to complain about in this sentence. He didn't know where to start. Buzz, in the previous life, after Yin Nuashing finished speaking, she froze and stared blankly at the live flower. She didn't say anything for a long time. Yin Nuashing and Su Ming also sat there quietly. Firstly, they couldn't leave yet. Secondly, since the memory was still playing, something else must have happened. However, what surprised them was that after sitting for a while, the scene in front of them suddenly blurred. However, it wasn't all of a sudden. It was as if darkness had engulfed the scene here and was spreading rapidly from afar. Meanwhile, Yin Nuashing from the previous life still didn't speak. Just when Yin Nuashing and the others thought that he had finished giving them instructions in his previous life and was waiting for the darkness to engulf them, the young man suddenly opened his eyes. At this time, his expression became very cold. It was so cold that Yin Nuashing felt goosebumps all over his body when he watched the video. He had seen many cold eyes, but he had never seen one as cold as this. Ganyuan region, God realm, demon world, monster realm. Go there and find yourself. Who are we? Where do we come from? What do we want to do? All of this, the young man's sudden words made Yin Nuashing, who had just finished shivering, stunned for a moment. He subconsciously wanted to ask something, but it was a pity that this was only an image, and he had not really met him. However, there were too many questions in his heart. Along the way, not only did he not solve the doubts in his heart, it was like a long rope, one knot after another stacked together, slowly, turning into a dead knot. By the time Yin Nuashing reacted, the darkness that had spread from the horizon had already eroded the basin. In her line of sight, the young man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His chin was slightly raised as he looked at the sky. However, from her perspective, she could sense an indelible fighting spirit from the young man's back. At this moment, she was like a warrior who was about to step onto the battlefield. Wait! Yin Nuashing suddenly shouted the words that she didn't have time to say. She hurriedly reached out and tried to grab the disappearing figure, but the darkness swallowed the entire video in one gulp. Little star, you're awake? In a daze, Yin Nuashing heard a pleasantly surprised voice. That gentle voice was so gentle that it could squeeze water out of a pinch. He instantly knew who it was. Yin Nuashing moved his palm and found that there was something soft in his hand. He was stunned, and his consciousness struggled to wake up. Although he was looking at the image in his soul, his body and consciousness had actually fallen into a deep sleep. Therefore, he wanted to wake up, but it was difficult to control. After struggling for a while, Yin Nuashing slowly opened his eyes. Unexpectedly, yet somewhat as expected, he saw a charming face full of smiles. Her crystal-like Mei Mao was flowing with joy. However, a large hand was pressed against her face. He was stunned for a moment. When he realized that it was his own hand, his handsome face turned red, and he hurriedly pulled his sinful right hand back. You're awake? Xian couldn't help but chuckle when she saw his blushing face. She asked with concern. Yes. Yin Nuashing nodded and hurriedly hid the blush on his face. He propped himself up and looked around twice. He saw Yuan Shi, Mo Yinhua, and the others squatting under a broken statue not far away. The others were scattered around and on alert. Everyone had their backs to them. Xian helped Yin Nuashing stand up and looked at Yuan Shi. Then, she looked at the former and said, When we found you, the light of the requiem lamp had just faded. You were lying unconscious on the ground. The requiem lamp and those wraiths were gone. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing quickly checked his body. In his impression, he should have come into contact with the requiem lamp, but that was just an impression. Who knew if it was an illusion? However, when he saw a pattern that looked like a lantern shining on his left shoulder, he knew that it was definitely not an illusion. With a thought, the pattern on the lantern lit up. Yin Nuashing clenched his right hand slightly, and a quaint bronze lamp appeared in front of him. At this time, the requiem lamp had completely restrained its light. The wick in the lamp was a black ball. Its volume was just enough to touch the four walls of the lamp. Moreover, in the center of the ball, there was a little light which was very gorgeous. This is the requiem lamp? Have you subdued little star? Seeing the bronze lamp that suddenly appeared in front of her, Zian looked at it in surprise. After a while, she suddenly understood. She knew the ability of Yun Nuoxing's soul-subduing divine body. Looking at it now, it seemed that the latter had subdued the soul-subduing lamp. Yes. Yun Nuoxing smiled and put away the requiem lamp. He didn't know the specific level of this lamp, nor did he know the material it was made of. However, its pattern covered the entire left shoulder. It was much larger than the patterns of the divine weapons he had collected later. He guessed that its level wouldn't be low. According to his estimation, it should be at the level of an eternal divine weapon. Let's go to the upper level. Yun Nuoxing smiled. The most valuable thing in the middle level had been taken away by him. After walking around the entire periphery of the ruins, there was nothing else. The entire interior of the ruins seemed to be sealed, or maybe it was just a solid rock. Since there was a saying that there was an upper level of the demon clan, then the upper level should be the place most worth looking forward to. Zia nodded. She was also a little curious about the upper level. Looking from a distance outside the ruins, the upper level seemed to be full of small temples. In terms of the degree of dilapidation, it was not as serious as the middle and lower levels. It was the most well-preserved place. Oh, you're awake? At this time, Yuanshi inadvertently glanced back and found that Yun Nuoxing had already stood up. He was a little stunned, and then smiled. Hearing the sound, Emo Yunhua and the others also turned their heads. When they saw that he was full of energy and was not affected at all, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Emo Yunhua waved his hand and led everyone to Yun Nuoxing. Emo Yunhua was still pinching and knocking on her body. After a comprehensive examination, he nodded, and the tension on his face really disappeared. Don't worry, I'm fine. Seeing Emo Yunhua like this, Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but smile. Emo Yunhua nodded, then thought of something. He sighed and said, "It's good that you're fine. However, the requiem lamp is gone. Fortunately, it took away all the resentful spirits along the way. Otherwise, we would be drinking tea with the king of hell now." When he said this, Zian glanced at Yun Nuoxing with a smile. When the latter saw this smile, he was stunned for a moment. His handsome face blushed, and he coughed dryly and rolled his eyes at Zian. "Cough. Okay, stop flirting with each other. Little brother, do you want to go to the upper level?" Although he did not understand the exchange of glances between the two, Emo Yunhua still coughed heavily. Then he looked at Yun Nuoxing and said, "If it's the upper level, no, the biggest unstable factor in the remains has been removed. It should be. So, now, this place may be safe. I just remembered that the upper level is a place for recording history or for carrying out rituals and other major events. It's not like what others think, where precious things are piled up on the upper level. These are relatively boring places. Little brother, do you want to go there?" Emo Yunhua said. In fact, he hoped that Yun Nuoxing and the others wouldn't go. Although the haunted incident had been solved, who knew if there were other dangers in this ruin? Moreover, he just said that the upper level was a place for major events such as rituals. The degree of protection was much higher than the other two levels. If Yun Nuoxing and the others could nod and leave, then everything will be fine. Let's go to the upper level and see the history of the past. Yun Nuoxing laughed heartily, making Mo Yunhua stagger and almost fall to the ground. At this point, he could only nod his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. When he felt that he was unlucky, he sighed secretly. Well, it's the right of young people to be crazy. This old man will also be crazy today and feel the taste of being young. Although he was muttering like this, in his heart, he was a million times unwilling to go. Even an emperor god had fallen in the ruins. He was just a small god king, but who asked him to meet this guy? Seeing his reluctant face, Yun Nuoxing stuck out his tongue and laughed. He looked around and was about to lift his foot to leave, but before he could move his foot, he suddenly shuddered. A cold current passed from head to toe, like an electric current to every part of his body, making him take a deep breath. What on earth is in this ruin? After taking a few breaths, Yun Nuoxing swallowed his saliva. When the cold current passed by, it felt like something was staring at him, making him shudder. Although he couldn't detect what it was, he instinctively felt that it was a gaze. However, he didn't feel anything special. It didn't seem like a gaze that was staring at a prey. It was just a cold gaze. Originally, I also wanted to give up, but it seems that I still have to go. Chapter 396. The stairs leading to the upper level were at the beginning of the first day. Although they could directly swim up, their intuition told them that at this moment it was better to walk up with their feet on the ground. There was no reason, it was just a kind of intuition, and they were the same. However, the passage on the other side of the ruins was blocked by collapsed boulders. Halfway through, they looked at the boulders and corals in front of them and could only silently raise their middle fingers. Then they walked back silently. When they walked back to the stairs, they could see two suns slowly descending below the horizon through the seawater. The afterglow dyed the entire sea crimson. The stairs leading to the upper level were very intact. There was not a trace of damage. There was not even a trace of green algae. It was as if this building had just been put into the water not long ago. There were no traces of it having been under the sea for a long time. There were about 100 steps on the stairs. It was very clean. When they reached the top of the slope, there was a long and spacious path. There were many giant pillars on both sides of the path. It extended all the way until they reached a building that looked like a city gate. I say it's too quiet. Who can say something? Yin Nuoxing and the others walked up the stairs and carefully observed for a while. They did not find anything wrong, so they walked toward the city gate in the distance. Although they said they were not worried, they saw that Mo Yunhua and the others had their eyes wide open. Their nerves were tense, and their fingers were gently rubbing. They looked like they were about to unsheathe their swords to express their vigilance and alertness. Even Yuan Shi and Xian were nervous. Yin Nuoxing also opened his eyes wide and looked left and right. Finally, he could not stand the nervous vigilance of the people around him. He could not help but mutter. There was nothing in the range of his soul power. Was there need to be so nervous? Mo Yinhua was stunned, as if he was in a daze. After a long time, he reacted and said with a smile, "Today's weather is good?" Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing was speechless. "I asked you to say something, but I didn't ask you to say something so cliché." However, he didn't say it out loud. He turned his head and looked at Yuan Shi, who had a strange expression on his face, and transmitted his voice. "What's wrong with you guys? Why do you look so gloomy after coming up? You look so gloomy." Yuan Shi's face twitched as he turned his head. Seeing that Yang Kai looked as if nothing had happened, he couldn't help but be surprised. He looked at Yang Kai with surprise for a while. After thinking for a while, he transmitted his voice. "Are you okay? What can happen to me?" After being asked this question out of the blue, Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. He was also a little confused about what had happened. Seeing that he didn't seem to be joking, Yuan Shi frowned and said, "The upper level of the ruins. This place is shrouded by an unknown force. Everyone seemed to be affected when we went up the stairs, but we didn't say anything. We thought you felt it too." Yin Nuoxing was startled and shook his head. He really didn't feel anything. "But it's not a problem. This force doesn't have much of an effect on us. We just feel a little suppressed." Yuan Shi smiled. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head. Just as he was about to nod, a cold current ran through his body again, causing him to suck in a breath of cold air. The cold feeling spread from the soles of his feet all the way to his head. His hands couldn't help but tremble. This can't be considered a problem. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly when he felt the same feeling again. He patted his chest lightly with his palm and scanned his surroundings. However, he didn't find anything special. Besides him, the others didn't seem to feel the same, so he didn't intend to say anything. Behind the towering city gate was a huge square made entirely of jade. At the edge of the square, facing the city gate, a huge shrine rose from the ground. Like the square, the shrine was also made of jade. At first glance, it looked like the shrine was rooted in the center of the square. There were many foot-wide passages carved into the white jade plaza, from the edges all the way to the center. The center of the passage was concave, forming a circular platform that was 1,000 feet in size. And in the center of this platform, there's also a circular area that was concave. This square seems to be used for some ceremony. Mo Yinhua, stood in the center of the square and looked around. Seeing the regular traces, he murmured softly. He had a vague memory. These grooves seemed to be something, but he couldn't remember clearly. Yin Oshing walked to the round platform at the bottom and slowly squatted down. He touched the mysterious runes on the round platform with his fingers and frowned. He stood up and looked again. He found that these runes were only on the round platform at the bottom. There were no runes anywhere else. On the round platform at the bottom, there was a small round cover that was 2 feet wide. It was covered with many complicated and incomprehensible patterns. Have you seen these things before? Yin Nuoxing turned his head and looked at Mo Yinhua. I think I have, but I don't think I've seen them before. Mo Yinhua scratched his head hard. His eyebrows were knitted together. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find any more memories about the white jade square or those runes and patterns. He slowly looked around the square and finally fixed his eyes on the divine palace in the distance. There were 3 small passageways on the white jade square that extended to the divine palace. However, rather than saying that they extended to the divine palace, it was more appropriate to say that they were drawn from the divine palace. It seemed that the square had some relationship with the divine palace. The people who walked around the square didn't say anything when they came back. It seemed that they didn't find anything worth mentioning. Let's go to the divine palace. Yin Nuoxing nodded. The others also nodded their chins in agreement. Since they had come here, it would be unreasonable if they didn't go in. The divine palace was a few sizes smaller than the divine palaces Yin Nuoxing had seen before. It wasn't very tall. The whole structure was white jade, as if it was carved out of a piece of white jade. There was no majesty, no pressure, and no feeling of mold. She didn't know if it was well-maintained or if the building hadn't existed for a long time and didn't have any traces of history. The interior of the divine palace was relatively empty. In the center, there was a pool surrounded by stones, emitting a faint light. There was a small stone table next to it. There was a chessboard on it, but the chess pieces were gone. It wasn't hard to imagine that 2 people once sat here, facing each other calmly under the blue moonlight. The interior of the divine palace was only about 2 feet high. On one side, there was a spiral staircase leading to the 2nd floor. 3 or 4 meters from the top, there was a platform built around the wall. Other than that, there was nothing else. Even the walls were smooth and clean. It was too clean. There's nothing here. Standing at the protruding part of the platform, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the empty and dead silent divine palace. The divine palace looked so vast from the outside, but it was an empty shell inside. I've checked the surroundings. There's not even a trace of energy left. There's nothing else on the upper level of the ruins except for this divine palace. Mo Yinhua shook his head, and there was unconcealable disappointment in his voice. Yin Nuoxing shrugged and straightened his body. He touched the wall with his palm, and then he was stunned. He seemed to have touched something just now. He quickly turned his gaze to the wall and took a closer look. There were 12 very light symbols engraved on the place where he had just laid down. Because they were too light and the color was dazzling white, he might not be able to see them even if he paid attention. He could only feel that there was something here by touching it. These 12 symbols were different from the ones he had seen in the square, but his intuition told him that they should be the same type of words. However, they were not words from the mythological era, nor were they words from the present. Moreover, this used to be the holy city of the Mer people. In other words, this should be the language of the Mer people. Unfortunately, he didn't learn it. With a wave of his hand, Yin Nuoxing asked everyone to come over and take a look. Mo Yinhua and the others also surrounded him. After seeing the 12 symbols, they frowned and shook their heads. Obviously, they didn't recognize these words. Moreover, they couldn't read any information from them with their divine senses. Could it be that this huge temple is just a decoration? Yuanxi dragged out her breath and wailed in anguish. It's not that there's nothing here. Mo Yinhua smiled and pointed down. At least this thing is genuine. Moon pool? No, moon god spring? Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and asked. In the spacious divine palace, only the pool of water that they had seen when they first entered was quietly emitting a dim light. There was no movement at all, but a lot of energy had gathered in it. I can't tell these two apart, but based on the shape, size, and position, it should be the moon god spring, right? Mo Yinhua shook his head. Since it could be placed in the divine palace, it should be the more precious moon god spring, right? Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing raised his head and realized that there was no opening at the top of the divine palace. Whether it was the moon pool or the moon god spring, they all needed to gather moonlight to form a strange energy that was slightly cold. Moreover, the water wasn't ordinary water. It was condensed from energy that had been compressed to a certain extent. Frowning, Yin Nuoxing slowly lay down and stared at the pool of water at a close distance. She looked around and finally fixed her gaze on a strange-looking stone. She even touched it with her hand. Crack! Where her slender finger touched the stone, it made a crisp sound and separated from the surrounding stones. It fell straight into the pool of water, giving Yin Nuoxing a fright. However, before it fell into the pool, he quickly grabbed it and stuffed it into the opening. After waiting for a while and seeing that nothing was wrong, he heaved a sigh of relief. After Yin Nuoxing stood up, he looked at everyone guiltily. However, they were walking around the walls of the divine palace just now, so no one noticed what he did. Therefore, no one noticed that a bright blue stream of water was slowly flowing from the stone to the ground, all the way to the white jade square. Mo Yinhua, who was walking by the wall, suddenly exclaimed softly. Everyone's attention was drawn to him. They saw that he was looking at the wall with his eyes wide open, as if he had discovered something. What's wrong? Yin Nuoxing quickly jumped over and asked. A rune suddenly appeared on the wall. Mo Yinhua said in a soft voice. Then he frowned. He had already checked this place, but there was nothing there. How could a rune suddenly appear? He didn't think that he was old enough to see it. Just as he was bewildered, everyone stopped in their tracks in a daze. Although they did not understand what he meant by appear, there was no need for further explanation, because they also saw that on the white jade-colored wall, there were suddenly countless runes, or rather, symbols that lit up. They densely covered the entire temple, and even the ground gradually lit up. And among the 12 symbols that were just discovered by Yin Nuoxing, the last one was also suffused with bits of light at this moment, in the square outside the divine palace. The 3 channels that connected the 2 places were flowing with bright blue water. It flowed from the divine palace to the square, then through the many notches, slowly filling up the 2 depressions in the center. The runes engraved on the round platform lit up after being irrigated by the water from the moon god spring. They started to squirm as if they had a life of their own. The runes on the round platform that was 20 feet in size started to beat like a heart. I remember now. Mo Yinhua suddenly shouted and punched his palm, giving everyone a fright. Before anyone could ask, he explained, these symbols are indeed the words of the merman race. However, that's not right. In ancient times, there was a kind of array that was driven by runes. These symbols are the runes that drive the array. Furthermore, it's a runic array unique to the merman race. Runic array? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. That kind of ancient array had been lost for many years. At least, there were no traces of it since ancient times. It must have been hard on Mo Yinhua to think about it for so long. Let me take a look. Although I don't recognize these runes, I can guess what this array is for based on the flow of energy. Mo Yinhua nodded, then stared at the wall, his eyes quickly sweeping over it. Just as everyone was waiting for the result, Yin Nuoxing once again shivered, and this time, the shiver was so cold that it penetrated into his bones. Even his heart was throbbing in pain, and a few drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, but he endured it and did not make a pained expression. What's going on? Yin Nuoxing swallowed his saliva and gasped softly with his palm, covering his chest. The light patterns that were beating like a heart bloomed to the strongest at this moment, and the round table suddenly opened, revealing a dark hole that seemed to lead to the interior of the ruins. The moment the round table opened, a black gas rushed out of the hole. I got it. After looking at the interior of the temple for more than a dozen times, Mo Yinhua finally knew the flow of energy of the runic array. He smiled, but the next moment his smile froze. What's wrong? Seeing that he stopped talking, everyone quickly asked. Mo Yunhua shuddered and gave a hollow laugh. He stretched out a trembling finger and drew a circle in front of him. Then he slowly closed the circle in his palms and murmured, "This runic array is used to trap." No, it's not to trap. His horrified expression was completely different from before. Now, it was as if he had seen a ghost. Moreover, it was as if he had seen an evil ghost with monstrous resentment. It had already opened its bloody mouth and was about to swallow him whole. Yes, it's like this. Mo Yinhua took a deep breath and nodded blankly. What the hell is it? Seeing that he did not give a specific answer, everyone was so anxious that they could not help but ask. Ancient times, in the previous eras, the realm of the gods wasn't as peaceful as it is now. You could even say that it was very turbulent. Because of the continuous wars, the world was filled with resentment, and in the end, strange creatures were formed, the vengeful spirits we just saw. However, they were mutated from humans, and these vengeful spirits were difficult to kill. Even the gods could only seal them, and then let time purify them. Although the era of war had ended, these creatures stayed behind to unleash their resentment on the world, pouring their anger on the world. There was a sage who once created a unique array in order to purify the resentful spirits in the world. That's what you saw today. The runic array is a product left behind from those turbulent eras. You mean these runic arrays here in the ruins? The runic arrays here are... Yuan Shi's face trembled, and he could not help but swallow his saliva. Seal? Yin Nuoxing murmured. Before she finished speaking, Yin Nuoxing felt an oppressive force coming from behind her. She turned her head abruptly, only to see a black gas rapidly expanding in her eyes. Chapter 397. This sudden turn of events caught everyone off guard. The ball of darkness rushed in front of everyone without any warning. Yin Nuoxing, who was the closest to it, could already feel its aura entering her body. At this moment, the flow of time seemed to have slowed down, and space seemed to have frozen. Even Yin Nuo, who possessed the light element, was unable to do anything. He could only watch as the darkness engulfed him. Xian, who was the closest to Yin Nuoxing, didn't even have time to shout. She could only reach out her jade-like hand instinctively. However, before she could touch him, the ball of darkness crashed into Yin Nuoxing. Pucci. After the darkness crashed into Yin Nuoxing, it exploded like a ball of gas and then lingered around him. It was as if the darkness was Yin Nuoxing's aura and was connected to him. After a moment, it slowly flowed into his body like a liquid. Little star. Oh no. Many of those ancient wraiths won't be gradually purified with time. The longer they are sealed, the stronger their resentment will become. They have the ability to invade people's hearts. Little brother, I'm afraid. Mo Yinhua was also shocked by the situation in front of him. He quickly pulled Yuan Shi and Xian behind him and looked at Yin Nuoxing cautiously. What? Hearing the words invade people's hearts, Yuan Shi and Xian shuddered violently. If Yin Nuoxing went berserk, the consequences would be a guy with 2 godly weapons could tear down the entire area, right? Xian shook her head forcefully. Now wasn't the time to think about this. She took a deep breath and looked at Yin Nuoxing, who wasn't moving at all. She was still surrounded by the black aura. She couldn't help but call out softly, "Little star." Just as he finished speaking, Yin Nuoxing, who had been silent all this time, suddenly trembled slightly. Then, he slowly turned his head and saw a lifeless face. That pair of beautiful light purple eyes were empty at this moment. They were pitch black and empty. When Ziyin saw this, she was so frightened that she covered her mouth. That pair of soulless eyes that were flowing with darkness slowly closed after looking at her for a moment. Yin Nuoxing's body seemed to have suddenly lost all strength and fell to the ground. Little star? Nuoxing. 2 panic cries accompanied by 2 shadows rushed out. Xian hurriedly picked up Yin Nuoxing and tested several parts of his body with her jade-like hands. When she found that he was still breathing, his pulse was normal, and his body temperature hadn't dropped, she gently sighed in relief. However, When Yuanshi used his fingers to open Yun Nuoxing's eyes and saw that those pure eyes were now filled with darkness, his heart that had just been relieved hung up again. Mo Yunhua also quickly stepped forward and placed his hand on Yun Nuoxing's forehead. His soul power poured into Yun Nuoxing's forehead, but before he could check, his soul power was pushed out by an unknown force, which made him frown. He tried a few times, but still couldn't enter Yun Nuoxing's soul, so he could only give up. Let's leave here first. We can't be sure that this place is safe. Mo Yunhua sighed and looked at the runic array that was still shining around them. He patted Yuanshi's shoulder and said, "Okay." Yuanshi nodded. There might be some unknown dangers here. Moreover, Yun Nuoxing's body had been invaded by a vengeful spirit. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Xian also nodded and looked at little purple soul who was still meditating in her arms. She glanced at Mo Yunhua hesitantly and thought for a while. Then, she put her into Yuanshi's arms and carried Yun Nuoxing. Looking at the two meditating girls in his arms, Yuanshi couldn't help but smile bitterly. He finally experienced what it was like for Yun Nuoxing to raise two children alone. "Let's go." Seeing that he didn't need his help, Mo Yunhua shrugged and took the lead to run out of the temple. Behind him, everyone followed closely. When everyone returned and passed by the white jade square, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw the sea of light that had just appeared. Especially when they saw the lid that had once sealed the vengeful spirit open, they felt a little shocked. The entire upper level of the ruins was used to seal a vengeful spirit. Mo Yunhua couldn't help but sigh. What a big deal. Should it be said that it was too big or that it was really necessary? Hearing this, several images flashed through Xian's mind. Those were the images that they had seen in the lower level and the middle level. These images were connected and finally connected to what had just happened. She had a guess. I think it's because this peaceful country was suddenly invaded by that vengeful spirit one day, resulting in this result. Maybe that's the case. Mo Yunhua touched his chin and nodded. Then, he said, "Let's not worry about that for now. Let's find a place to settle down first. Brother's matter can only be solved after we stop." Naturally, no one objected to Mo Yunhua's words. After all, only he knew this place. Xian and the others didn't even know where the East Sea was. Seeing that they all nodded, Mo Yunhua also breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone had just come out of the ruins. After a short rest, they returned to the surface of the sea. Then they followed Mo Yunhua to the area in the south. "Hey, idiot, get up quickly." I said, the overly dazzling North Star, "Get up quickly. Don't sleep anymore. Little star, if you don't get up, I'll bite you. I'll really bite you." His consciousness was awakened by a few anxious cries and a slight pain. His blurry vision lasted for a few seconds before it slowly became clear. Then, Yun Nuoxing saw a purple-clothed girl holding onto his arm. Her small mouth was slightly open and her silver teeth were gently pressed against it. A pair of bright eyes were fiercely glaring at him. "Why don't I remember you biting people?" Seeing this, Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but laugh. After hearing his voice, Zai lightly snorted. She casually wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth and said, "You're finally up. If you don't get up, I'll really bite you." Yun Nuoxing smiled and sat up with his hands supporting his body. Waves of tearing pain came from his mind, causing him to frown. "What's wrong? Why are you so anxious to wake me up?" Yun Nuoxing sighed. Since he woke up in the spiritual world, he should be in a deep sleep state now. He only remembered the last scene he saw. He was swallowed by the darkness. Are Xian and the others okay? Hearing this, Zai heavily sighed and said, "If you have the time to worry about others, you should worry about yourself first." "What's—" Before Yun Nuoxing could finish speaking, he saw Zai pointing her slender finger in front of her. This caused him to be stunned. He raised his head suspiciously, and then he couldn't even speak. What occupied his entire field of vision was the chaotic and violent darkness. It was boiling like boiling water and erupting like a volcano. It quietly stayed in that area. Although there was some activity, there was no sign of it expanding. However, If one looked carefully, they would realize that it wasn't that the darkness wasn't expanding. It was just that it was blocked. Not far in front of it, a slender light blue figure was quietly sitting. A majestic spiritual power was emitted from her delicate body, suppressing the darkness's movements. Xinr. Seeing that figure and what she was doing, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but call out. However, after sensing that Lan Xinr was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. When Lan Xinr heard his voice, she turned her head and looked at Yin Nuashing. She smiled sweetly and said, "Brother Nuashing, don't worry. I'm fine." With that, she turned back and concentrated on suppressing the darkness. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing nodded. Then, he frowned and looked at the unknown darkness. He didn't know what it wanted to do. As you can see, your soul has been invaded by that darkness. Although Xnr is suppressing it, there's no guarantee that it won't spread and invade your soul. Zai sighed and scratched his head. He said, "Your previous guess was correct. It was so correct that I didn't expect it to be true." "What do you mean?" Yin Nuashing blinked. He didn't understand what Zai was saying. When you just reached the stairs in the middle level, you smelled the scent of darkness from the traces underground, right? That scent is very similar to the Tao Ye shadow. Zai sighed. Well, Yin Nuashing thought for a while and nodded. Then he paused and suddenly opened his eyes wide. His trembling voice scared himself. "Wait, what you said is correct. Could it be that this thing is Tao Tai?" "No, it's not it. Didn't Mo Yinhua say that Tao Tai is sealed in the Kuan Yuan region? You are in the East Sea of the Divine Land. You are in a remote place and have nothing to do with it." Zai shook his head. Then, hearing this, Yin Nuashing was a little confused. Since it was not Tao Tai, what was it? He had smelled the scent that was very similar to it once. "Well, although you are very stupid and naive to think that you have tacitly marked them with a big red cross in your heart, because there is no news of the birth of the three big figures. The fact is that they are still alive and well. They are so good that they still have the strength to invade a person's soul." Zai sighed heavily and squatted down in annoyance. Could it be the other three? No way. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing also thought of something. As soon as this result came to his mind, he felt a sense of dizziness in his head. Although I don't want to say yes, the current situation seems to allow us to nod. Zai sighed again and said gloomily, "In this world, the only things that have a similar scent to the energy of Tao Tai are the remaining three big guys among the four beasts." After hearing this answer, which he was a little mentally prepared for, Yin Nuashing was not so surprised. He asked, "Which one of the three?" Hearing this, Zai frowned and turned to look at the pitch-black gas. After thinking for a long time, he muttered, "Neither demon nor demon, shapeless and without a trace. It should be one of the four beasts, Hundun." Hundun. This was the first time he heard this guy's name, but this legendary divine beast was already in his body. He did not know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, although it was only a ball of black gas now and had yet to take form. There is no news of Hundun's birth because its form was already scattered when it was first born. Although it did not have a body after its transformation, its original form is still like this. After going through 2 or 3 eras, it was repeatedly weakened and continuously weakened. Therefore, it has never had a chance to be resurrected, and now it is equivalent to its initial stage of birth. So I said faintly. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing heaved a sigh of relief. No wonder his soul was not invaded in one breath. It turned out that Hundun did not have much power now. Although it was not enough to be feared, at least there was a way to suppress it. Xinr and I can take turns to suppress it, but if we keep suppressing it, you won't be able to wake up. Zai sighed. Chapter 398. I was wondering why this young man looked so familiar. So it's him. At the noisy city gate, a young man with a full beard that made him look like a lion was gently stroking his beard. He was looking at a wanted poster that was pasted on the side of the city wall, which was not very high. He seemed to be deep in thought as he gently tapped his chin. When he turned his head around, he saw a young girl in her embrace looking at him with a cautious expression. Even the young man by the side had narrowed his eyes. The young man was stunned. Then he thought of something and smiled. Don't worry. The Nightwalker Alliance is a neutral force. We won't take the initiative to get involved in the affairs of any force. Moreover, this young man has the Great Elder's token. I won't do anything to him. Hearing this, the girl and the young man looked at each other. After a while, they nodded and believed the young man's words. The group was naturally Xian and the others who had escaped from the underwater ruins. It took them 7 days to reach this small city from there. This place did not belong to the territory of any magical beast group. It was a garrison of the Nightwalker Alliance in the East Sea. It served as a transit and rest station on the vast sea. However, it was still a long way from the sea god's realm. 7 days had passed, and Yun Nuashing's situation had not changed. Xian and Yuan, she took turns to look after her. Every day, they opened the former's eyes and saw the deeper darkness. Their hearts sank little by little. They were also worried about the 2 girls, Ming and Little Purple Soul. They had been in a deep sleep for a while and had not woken up. One time, they inadvertently discovered that their souls had left their bodies and gone to an unknown place. This made Xian and the others panic for a while. However, they returned after a period of time and did not find any problems. Regarding this, even Mo Yunhua, who was a powerful king of hell, was confused. He had never seen such a strange thing in his life. Indeed, he had lived for a long time. Mo Yunhua settled everyone in a luxurious hotel, comforted them with a few words, and then went out. This time, he had to report to his superiors that he had come back from the relics. At the same time, he asked a few people to check on Yun Nuashing and the 2 girls to see if there was any way. Less than half a day later, Mo Yinhua returned with an old man in a purple gold robe. His robe was slightly different from the former's, but the large character on his back made everyone understand his identity. The old man wore a badge on his chest. The badge was surrounded by flames, and a golden cauldron appeared. Outside the cauldron were 6 purple golden stars that emitted dazzling light. Clearly, this was an alchemist who had reached the elite grade. In terms of status, an elite grade alchemist was no lower than a god king. The old man was obviously called over by Mo Yinhua from the Alliance. From the way the old man spoke to him, the latter had some status. After all, a Nether King expert was already a core member. The treatment he received wouldn't be any worse than the former. However, what worried Xian and the others was that after the old man checked on Yun Nuashing's situation, he just shook his head and said, there are several souls in his body, and his soul is also suppressed. As for when he can wake up, it depends on when he can end this state. At this time, if someone disturbs him casually, his soul may be damaged. Mo Yinhua was very surprised by the words of these several souls, but Xian and the others understood. They knew that Ziyi and Lan Shiner were lurking in Yun Nuashing's soul. Obviously, they were helping Yun Nuashing suppress the resentful spirit. As for when it would end, no one knew. Maybe he is being attracted by something? Compared to the 2 little girls, Yun Nuashing's situation might be better. After the old man looked at the 2 little guys, the wrinkles on his forehead were squeezed so tightly that they could squeeze a fly to death. He sat on the chair and kept pulling his beard. He had a puzzled look on his face. After a long time, he threw out this sentence, and then there was no more. Mo Yinhua was baffled as he looked at the 3 people. One of them had his soul fighting, and the other 2 seemed to have their souls hooked. He couldn't understand what was going on. However, he couldn't say anything now. After sending the old man back, he turned around and went back. The city of this transit station belongs to the Nightwalker Alliance. If you need anything, use the token to call me, or catch someone from the Alliance on the street and show them the token. During this time, the Alliance has many things to do, so I will not accompany you. After Mo Yinhua came back, he threw a yellow token to Yuan Shi. Then, he hurriedly said a few words and flew away as fast as he could. It was as if there was a ferocious beast chasing after him, which made Yuan Shi and the others confused. Since Yun Nuashing and the others could not wake up for the time being, Xian and the others naturally chose to stay. After all, The core of this journey was unconscious, and they could not travel alone. Moreover, this was a neutral place, so they did not have to worry about being chased by the chief family. They saw Mo Yunhua personally tear down all the bounty posters and burn them, because Yun Nuoxing's condition was a little special. Only he could solve it himself. Xian and the others could only wait and watch the sun set and rise every day. The first thing they did every day was to open Yun Nuoxing's eyes, hoping to see a pair of pure, light purple eyes and not that strange mass of black. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Yun Nuoxing in the room still showed no signs of waking up. However, there were no abnormalities in her body. Her breathing was normal, and there was nothing wrong with her body. Only her soul was still in a state of deep sleep. In this month, Mo Yunhua came many times. Every time he came, he would bring 1 or 2 people with him. There were pharmacists, alchemists, charm masters, array masters, and even the rare totem users from the Alliance. However, the results were always disappointing. After calling so many people, Mo Yunhua could not help but feel disappointed. He had used all the power he had at his disposal, even if he wanted to find someone else to help. After all, the problem was with Yun Nuoxing's soul. No one dared to do anything. If they were not careful, her soul would be destroyed. That was not an outcome they wanted to see. While everyone was anxious and helpless, in the world of Yun Nuoxing's soul, it was unusually lively. Multiple colors of energy intertwined to form a curtain of light. However, under these brilliant colors, there was a ball of darkness that was constantly wriggling. In a month, this ball of chaos did not change much. It was firmly rooted in Yun Nuoxing's soul. Hey, you bastard. You have been freeloading here for more than a month. Shouldn't you King say something to me? Sitting cross-legged in the void, Yun Nuoxing had a hideous smile on her face. The veins on her forehead were popping out. On her palm, the rich light element was very dazzling, but it could not penetrate the strange ball of darkness in front of her. She had been awake in her soul for a month, but her consciousness had always been in a state of deep sleep. If she could not resolve the chaos, she was afraid that she would have to continue sleeping. However, in this month, no matter how she struggled, the ball of black energy did not move at all. It had always been guarding that area. All the attacks that were launched against it were easily resolved. Newborn stage. Have you ever seen anyone who can speak as soon as they are born? Zai stretched lazily, immediately revealing her alluring, slender curves. After a long yawn, Mei Mao looked at Yun Nuoxing. Seeing the ball of pure light element condensed in his hand, she could not help but shake her head. Brother Nuoxing, if you can't do it, then go and sleep. Sister Zai and I can do it. At the side, Lan Shiner raised her head slightly and smiled gently at Yun Nuoxing. In this month, they had been suppressing chaos, which was why it did not move at all. As the Soul Dominator, Yun Nuoxing was also scratching his head, trying to expel this ball of black fog bastard. With such a strange thing taking root in his soul, it was really difficult for him to sleep and eat in peace. Chirp! In another direction, a bright red little fellow also raised its head and chirped softly. On its body, pink flames were gently writhing, and wisps of it were transmitted to the light screen in front of it. Half a month ago, Xiao Feng had somehow entered Yun Nuoxing's soul and helped to suppress chaos. Xian, who could not find Xiao Feng, thought that Xiao Feng had flown away on its own. That's how it is. Yun Nuoxing sighed sadly and said, as long as this bastard doesn't go out, I can't sleep for a day. After all, chaos existed in his soul. It could easily make him hover between life and death, and he would be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The 3 of them and a mythical beast had been suppressing that ball of black fog for half a month, but the latter acted as if nothing had happened. It did not even care about them and did not move at all, as if it was determined to stay here and not leave. During this period, Yun Nuoxing also felt other energy coming in. It was only at that time that the ball of black fog moved a little, but it was not too obvious, which made him gnash his teeth in hatred. After sighing, Yin Nuoxing could not help but look at Xiaofeng. Although both of them were mythical beasts, one's power leaned towards the light side, while the other leaned towards the dark side. However, these two guys were now in their early stages, and neither could do anything to the other. The three people and the mythical beast in the fog confronted each other just like that. Although Yin Nuoxing thought about directly using the swirling zither to shatter the chaos, when he really did it, he realized that no matter how he attacked, it did not react at all. It was as if its shape had always been the same and had never changed. The divine imprint that Xian Yin had left on him was also in defense. Even so, they did not relax. At their peak, any one of the four beasts could directly fight against a heavenly god. Yin Nuoxing did not know which realm Xian Yin was in, so he did not dare to relax too much. It's not that there's no solution. At this time, the netherworld sword that had been hanging above Yin Nuoxing's head all this time spoke, causing everyone to look over. Zai frowned slightly. What solution? Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing's spirit was lifted, and he quickly asked, Netherworld sword wanted to say it directly, but when he noticed Zai's gaze, he hesitated and said, rather than a solution, it's more like a trick. However, it can indeed solve the problem at hand. How's a trick? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Zai frowned. Mei Mao stared at the netherworld sword, but after a while, she only sighed, as if she also knew something but did not say it. Now that the netherworld sword could not help but want to say it, she could only wait. That solution is... The netherworld sword paused, looked at Yin Nuoxing hesitantly, and sighed. That is, to let the chaos reside in your body. As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Nuoxing's jaw dropped to his leg. His eyes widened as he looked at the netherworld sword floating in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He wondered if his ears could be fixed. Are you kidding me? After a while, Yin Nuoxing suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Let the chaos reside in his body. What kind of joke was this? Over time, the chaos would grow in his body and recover. On the day that the legendary tyrannical, heartless, and dark monster awakened, the first thing it would do would be to sacrifice him. Right? As the saying goes, raising a tiger invites calamity. In fact, this is indeed the only way to wake you up. Perhaps you still don't know this, but this kind of abnormal deep sleep will gradually cause your body to wither. It's only been a month now, so nothing much will happen. However, after a little longer, you will find that your body is gradually breaking down. Zi sighed heavily. Hearing the affirmative answer, Yin Nuoxing suddenly turned his head, only to see Zai biting his red lips and frowning slightly. He did not look at him, as if he knew how he would react. Zai, you know about this too? Yin Nuoxing muttered. Brother Nuoxing, I know about it too, but we didn't say it out loud because... Lan Xian also said softly. She lowered her head like a child who had done something wrong, not daring to look at Yin Nuoxing. Are you afraid that I can't accept it? Yin Nuoxing sighed when he heard that. Hearing that, everyone nodded in tacit agreement. For a moment, the place became abnormally quiet, so quiet that even the sound of breathing could not be heard. What? After a long time, Yin Nuoxing suddenly laughed, breaking the awkwardness. Zai and the others were stunned. When they turned their gazes, they saw Yin Nuoxing lying in the air with his hands under his head. He even crossed his legs, and there was a smile on his handsome face. Do as you please. Just don't torture me until I die. Yin Nuoxing smiled nonchalantly. After a moment, he felt that something was wrong and added, I still have things that I want to do. Before that, I don't want to die so casually. If you have a way, just do it. F***CK. Give me back my feelings. Hearing this, Zai instantly went berserk. She pounced on Yin Nuoxing and scratched him. To think that she had worried about this little idiot for a month. What a waste of her feelings. Chapter 399. Early in the morning, he woke up in the dazzling light. He stretched out his hand to block the dazzling sunlight and rubbed his eyes. The light purple eyes that had been tightly shut for more than a month slowly opened. He raised his arm and felt a wave of stiffness. His palm was also as hard as a rock. It's only been more than a month, and my body doesn't feel like it belongs to me anymore. Yin Nuashing moved her arms slightly and laughed bitterly. This was the so-called abnormal deep sleep. If it had been any longer, she probably wouldn't have been able to recognize her own body. Yin Nuashing slowly sat up from the bed. She had just stretched her body when she casually glanced around and stopped in front of the bed. She looked at the person lying on the side of the bed and couldn't help but smile. She patted her head with heartache. He knew that this girl had been by his side for more than a month, waiting for him to wake up. The sunlight shone through the window and shone on Yin Nuashing's body. Her elongated shadow fell on Xian's body. When she saw her own shadow, her hand couldn't help but tremble and her pupils shrank slightly. However, she returned to normal after a while. She just felt a little strange in her heart. Brother Nuashing, chaos has been temporarily suppressed and is lodging in your shadow. It won't wake up in a short period of time. However, we don't know when it will wake up. When that time comes, it's hard to say whether you'll be controlling it or it'll be controlling you. You can only pray that before that day comes, you'll be strong enough to not be controlled by it. Zai and the other's words echoed in her mind. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and said to herself, as if she was comforting herself, "It'll be all right." Her gentle movements woke up the person who was sound asleep. Yin Nuashing saw this and gently retracted her hand. There was some gentleness in her eyes. She couldn't help but smile when she saw how confused she was when she woke up. Xian rubbed her eyes and was in a daze for a full minute. She only came back to her senses when she saw a slender hand waving in front of her. She was stunned for a moment. Then joy instantly filled her mind. She turned her head, and her eyes met with a pair of beautiful purple crystal eyes. The huge rock in her heart finally fell slowly. "Little star, you're awake." Xian stood up. Her jade-like hands slid from his head to his palms. She held his hands with both of her hands, and her charming face suddenly moved closer to his head. Her bright eyes stared straight at him as she asked, "Are you little Xingxing?" Hearing this, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but chuckle. She pulled her to sit down and gently stroked her head with her other hand. "What's wrong, little girl? You can't even recognize the person you confessed to?" Hearing Yin Nuashing mention this, Xian blushed. How could she not recognize him? "Are you all right?" Xian asked as she sat a little closer to him. She looked at his calm and handsome face that had a slight smile on it. "Are you okay?" Yin Nuashing nodded half her head, then sighed. Her eyes met the deep purple eyes, and she looked away unnaturally. He didn't want anyone to know about the shocking fact that chaos was residing in his shadow. He didn't want anyone to know about it, not even the people close to him. He could bear it alone. "Yes, as long as you're okay." Xian smiled and rubbed her head against his shoulder. She didn't ask anything else. "What happened in the past month or so? Where are we?" Seeing that she was like a kitten, Yin Nuashing's smile softened a little. She put her hand on her head and asked slowly. Hearing this, Xian looked at Mei Mao, organized her thoughts, and told her what happened in the past month. There wasn't anything special during this time. Yin Nuashing was a little surprised by Mo Yinhua's visit, but after thinking about it, he understood. Mo Yinhua was now half an elder. He probably did this out of duty, right? Ming and little purple soul situation. I don't know. Yin Nuashing was a little worried when he heard that the souls of the two little girls had left their bodies. He saw Xian looking at him and could only smile bitterly. It probably had something to do with the sound of the sea, but he wasn't very sure. Yin Nuashing reached out to stroke the hair that had fallen on his forehead. He smiled and said, "These two girls aren't simple. I'll go take a look later." He didn't finish speaking because he saw Ziyan's pale face. Her eyes were filled with shock as she stared at him. Her turbulent appearance gave Yin Nuashing a fright, and he didn't even continue speaking. "Little star, you." Mei Mao stared at him without blinking. Xian murmured in a low voice. She used her right hand to brush the hair that had fallen on the left side of her forehead. When she looked closely, her pupils shrank a little. She seemed to be frightened. "What's wrong?" Yin Nuashing was frightened by her appearance. He gulped and couldn't help but ask. Xian didn't say anything. She brushed her hair with her right hand and raised her left hand. Wisps of faint, immortal qi gushed out from her white palm and slowly condensed into a mirror. Although it was a little illusory, it was already taking shape. Energy condensation was an ability that could only be possessed by those above the immortal grade. It was an item that could be condensed from one's own energy or elements. It could be used to attack or defend against enemies. It was much more powerful than ordinary items. However, it couldn't last for too long and consumed a lot of energy. It was a trump card. Although Xian was only at the half-immortal grade, with the nature of her 5 elements body, she could still condense items. As soon as the mirror appeared, Xian grabbed it and pointed it at Yin Nuoxing's forehead. Yin Nuoxing also hurriedly looked at it. With just a glance, he knew why the former's expression was so shaken. What appeared in the mirror was a delicate face of a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Her fair and smooth skin made people want to caress it. However, in the area from the right forehead to the eyebrows of this beautiful face, there was an inharmonious mark that looked like a rune. It was strangely black, like a wisp of death chi lingering between the eyebrows. Anyone who saw it would be shocked by this abrupt thing. Rune seal. From a moment the mysterious mark fell into her eyes, Yin Nuoxing knew what was going on. It seemed that this was a mark left behind by the chaos that resided in his shadow. Unlike the other patterns on his body, this mark was a seal. This was also the first time Yin Nuoxing had been troubled by the addition of something on her body. Haha, it's okay. Seeing that Xian was still in shock, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smile. He patted her head and comforted her. He still looked indifferent, but in Xian's eyes, she couldn't help but sigh. She saw the marks of a seal on the walls of the ruins. She couldn't understand it, but she could recognize it. How could she not know that Yin Nuoxing said this? Because he didn't want them to worry. Since he said so, she could only agree. Yin Nuoxing smiled. He closed his eyes and activated the connection he had with Shui Yan's skin, after which his face flickered with dots of light. In a short moment, it covered his entire face. When the light disappeared, the face of the young man appeared. The upper right corner of his face no longer had the trace of the black seal. It seemed that this trace had been covered by Shui Yan's skin. This would save him some trouble and prevent him from being seen on the streets and being criticized by others. Yo, Nuoxing, you're finally awake. Just as he covered up the seal, Yuanxi gently pushed the door open. The sunlight shone on his face as he walked in. When he gently closed the door and turned around, he saw Yin Nuoxing looking at him with a smile. He couldn't help but laugh. He quickly walked over and slapped Yin Nuoxing's head. I'm injured. Be gentle, really. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes at Yuanxi bitterly as she rubbed her head. She couldn't help but grumble. I like it. Yuanxi licked his lips and revealed a smile that made Yin Nuoxing shiver. When Xian saw Yuanxi walk in, she wanted to say something, but Yin Nuoxing squeezed her hand a few times. She understood what he meant. He didn't want Yuanxi to know, so she followed his wishes and didn't say anything. She sighed and looked at him strangely. Are you all right? How's the vengeful spirit? Did you get rid of it? I heard from Elder Mo that vengeful spirits can invade people's hearts, but looking at you, it doesn't seem like there's any problem at all. Yuanxi pulled Yin Nuoxing and looked around. His mouth kept spitting out droplets of water, making the latter's face more and more black lines. You spat out tons of questions in one breath. Are you trying to choke me to death? Yin Nuoxing calmly wiped the saliva off her face and rolled her eyes. She then spread her hands and smiled. A mere demon wants to shake my heart? How is that possible? Although she could clearly feel a pair of eyes staring at her as she spoke, she could only force herself to finish her sentence. Is that so? It's fine as long as you're fine. When Elder Mo comes, tell him that he doesn't have to rush to bring those strange people here. Yuanxi nodded. He thought for a while and said, What's the plan for the future? I'll go and prepare it. Plan? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. The trip to the ruins had come to an end. No, it should be said that they had paused for a while. Now it was time to get back on track. Thinking of this, she said, According to the original plan, we'll go to the Sea God's domain first and take some tests. Then, we'll go to the Fengyan Mountain. The Fengyan Mountain, huh? Yuanxi nodded when he heard that. He said, However, I think it's better not to go to the Fengyan Mountain in the near future. What's wrong? Yin Nuashing looked at him in confusion. Some big forces seem to be moving there. There's still a long distance between the Fengyan Mountain and the Sea God's domain, but the news has spread here. It's said that they're looking for some kind of weapon or medicine. There's no specific explanation on this. In short, the movement there is a little big. Yuan, she said. Attacking the life forbidden zone? Yin Nuashing was startled. He had heard of this kind of thing a lot in the rumors, but he had never thought that he would be able to see it in real life. Moreover, this news was closer to them. What made him feel at ease was that those forces did not seem to be aiming for the origin of fire. However, the attacks of the big forces on the life forbidden zone could easily last for a year and a half. During that period of time, if they appeared in sealed areas, they would be treated as suspicious people. Although Yin Nuashing was not afraid, she did not want to cause too much unnecessary trouble. Right now, he had already dragged a lot of scapegoats and did not want to take any more. If he did not go, if the Fengyan Mountain had the origin of fire, after such a long search, the possibility of being found would increase with the passage of time. What should he do? Should he go or not? Damn it. Who cares what kind of big force it is? Even if the Heavenly King comes, I have to go. After thinking for a few seconds, Yin Nuashing turned her head and laughed. No one could stop her from helping Xian repair his 5 elements body. Yuan Shi also knew about this, so when he heard this answer, he also smiled. He was not surprised at all. Creak. While Yin Nuashing and the others were discussing, the door was gently opened again, silencing the former. A moment later, a lion's face popped out from the door. When he peeked his head out and saw Yin Nuashing smiling at him, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Mo. Yin Nuashing smiled and greeted him. No matter what purpose Mo Yanhua had for helping him, since it was with good intentions, he would treat people with a smile. Don't. I can't afford to be an elder. Hearing this, Mo Yanhua laughed bitterly. He pushed the door open completely and walked in. Behind him, there was an old man. It was the pharmacist that Mo Yanhua had found that day. He had also brought him here today. It seemed that he was still worried about Yin Nuashing's problem. Is everything all right? However, since Yin Nuashing had already woken up, there was no need to call anyone else. Mo Yanhua waved his hand. The old man knew what he meant. He nodded, turned around, and slowly walked out. Yin Nuashing smiled and nodded. This was the 3rd time he had answered today. His cheeks couldn't help but twitch a few times. Mo Yanhua had just walked to the bedside and chatted with the 3 people for a while. Xian had just gone to make tea and poured a few cups. Mo Yanhua's face suddenly changed, as if he had received some information. His face was a little ugly and a little gloomy. Little brother, I still have something to do. I'll leave first. I want to accompany you. Since you're awake, you can walk around here. I'll find someone to show you around. After hurriedly drinking a cup of tea, Mo Yanhua spoke 10 times faster than usual. He lifted his foot and jumped onto the windowsill. It seemed that he was so anxious that he was about to hit the wall. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Yin Nuashing was startled by his lion jumping out of the window move. He quickly grabbed him back and asked. Mo Yanhua's face was gloomy and uncertain. He looked at Yin Nuashing hesitantly, sighed, and said, Hey, little brother, you have the Elder's token, so you're not an outsider. You can indeed ask about the Alliance's matters, but little brother, please don't reveal this matter. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing nodded. Looking at his gloomy face, he thought that something big must have happened. He naturally wouldn't reveal this kind of Alliance's matters casually. Seeing him nod, Mo Yanhua also breathed a sigh of relief and said, I just received a message from the Alliance. Taiyuan territory. Something happened. Chapter 400. Something happened in the Taiyuan territory. When they heard this news, the expressions of Yin Nuashing and the other 2 changed. Ziyin and the other 2 were stunned. The former sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he didn't know what Mo Yanhua meant when he said that something had happened in the Source Peak territory, he thought that something earth-shattering had happened in the entire territory. And there were still people he knew in the Source Peak territory. Seeing Yin Nuashing's expression change, and Mo Yunhua was also stunned. Then, he suddenly thought of something and quickly said, "Little brother, you are the Taiyuan goddess. I think your hometown is also in the Taiyuan territory. But it doesn't matter. It's not the entire Taiyuan territory that's in trouble. To be precise, the place where the trouble happened is very far away from densely populated areas." Hearing the words Taiyuan goddess, the veins on Yun Nuoxing's forehead bulged. He gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked and almost broke. Hearing the creaking sound, Mo Yunhua and the others laughed dryly and wiped their sweat. Mo Yunhua was anxious and said something he shouldn't have said. He really touched a sore spot. "Tell me the details. Where did the trouble happen?" Yun Nuoxing let out a long breath, glared at the three, and asked, "Little brother should know. It's in the northwest of the Taiyuan territory. It's a famous primeval forest shrouded in fog all year round," Mo Yunhua said. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing was stunned. Even if Mo Yunhua didn't say the name, he knew where it was. The forest he had been to was also the place where the title of Taiyuan goddess was born. That forest was originally the third place on the Heaven and Earth treasure ranking. The place where the Glories Will tree had taken root, Ghost Forest. It was one of the famous life forbidden zones in the Taiyuan territory. Seeing the slight change in Yun Nuoxing's expression, Mo Yunhua nodded and slowly said, "Little brother, you should know that Taiyuan goddess is currently under attack. I believe that little brother already knows that the burning Yama Mountain is currently being attacked by several major forces. In fact, attacking the life forbidden zone is not a very rare thing. Of course, for you juniors, you might not have seen it before, but you will see it more often in the future. You will often hear about which forces went where they were completely wiped out, and what they obtained. Of course, the attack on the Ghost Chi Forest has already been prepared for a period of time. As for the reason, little brother, you should know. That's right, it's because of the Glories Will tree. It's rumored that it has already disappeared. On the surface, you may not have heard any news of people going to the Ghost Chi Forest to search for the Glories Will tree, because many of the movements of the forces are in the dark, and the news is completely blocked. Our Nightwalker Alliance naturally wouldn't miss this trip, so we know a lot of news. Speaking of which, little brother is famous in the Ghost Chi Forest. Suddenly, Mo Yunhua changed the topic and looked at Xian and the others with a slight smile. Little Star is famous in the Ghost Chi Forest? Xian was stunned. When Yun Nuoxing heard this, a surge of uneasiness suddenly surged in his heart. When he came back to his senses, he already saw Mo Yunhua there with a sinister smile. He only had time to shout in his heart, "Oh no." "Yes, little brother," Mo Yunhua said with a sinister smile. "Don't listen to his nonsense. Things like setting fire to the mountain and hitting the crippled Ape King with an arrow were definitely not done by me." Yun Nuoxing was anxious and didn't know what he wanted to hide, so he hurriedly defended himself. Everyone was stunned for a long time. After looking at each other for a while, they all laughed dryly. He confessed without being pressed. "Oh, but the place where the incident happened was not where the two things happened." After laughing for a while, Mo Yunhua straightened his face and looked at Yun Nuoxing, saying, "The Ghost Chi Forest is divided into 3 layers and 4 areas. Little brother, do you know that?" Yun Nuoxing nodded and said, "The Ghost Chi Forest is divided into 3 layers. From the outside to the inside, the outer layer is the cold air forest, then the soul forest, and the fog forest. Apart from these 3 areas, there is the mountain range in the center, the Death Mountain Range. However, I have never been there. Back then, I only walked around the cold air forest." After saying that, he looked at Mo Yunhua. Mo Yunhua nodded and said, "Outside the Death Mountain Range is the fog forest. These 2 areas are 1 layer. The place where the incident happened was the Death Mountain Range in the center of the Ghost Chi Forest." "What exactly happened?" Yun Nuoxing frowned and asked. "Well, those who joined forces to attack the Death Mountain Range seem to have been completely annihilated." Mo Yunhua stroked his beard and said, "In fact, the plan to attack the Death Mountain Range has been planned for a long time. After the Glories Will tree appeared, many forces sped up the process. Some time ago, there were big forces and great sects that had entered one after another. Although they had entered, they didn't go straight in. Until recently, there was news of the destruction of the great sects and even the fall of gods. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing remembered that when he was still in the Lihuan city, the Golden Princess and the others had said that something had happened in the Taiyuan region. It seemed that at that time, the attack on the Ghost Chi Forest had already begun. It was just that there had been a lot of movements recently, and the news involved was so serious that it could spread through these regions and reach them. Is the 9 temples involved? Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing was a little worried. Since the big forces were destroyed, if the 9 temples also went in, it should be inevitable. The things that Jin Wang and the others had done to him had made him regard himself as half a member of the 9 temples. Moreover, in his previous life, he had also said that if he could, he would seek refuge with the 9 temples. The Temple of Elements doesn't matter because they didn't participate in this matter at all. Only a few elders observed from afar, and there was no news of them directly marching in. Mo Yinhua thought for a moment and said, "Our alliance also lost some people. Alas, I don't know how we lost people. The news I heard was one-sided. The group of people who passed the news mostly said that something had come alive." Come alive? Yin Nuashing was stunned. The first thought that came to his mind when he heard this word was that some fierce beast had awakened in the Death Mountain Range. I also don't know what has come alive. Mo Yinhua sighed and shook his head. He said, "Well, let's not talk too much. In short, we're going to the Ghost Forest. Little brother, do you want to come with us? According to the token that you are holding, there is no problem with following us." Yin Nuashing blinked when he heard this. According to their plan, they wouldn't turn back if there was nothing important. Moreover, it seemed that there was no need to go back now. It seemed that there was nothing in the Ghost Forest that was worth a trip. After thinking for a moment, he took out the treasure map and looked at the forest in the upper left corner of the map. Then, his cheeks trembled for a moment. It only lasted for a moment. Before he could be seen, he had already returned to normal. He silently put away the map and looked at Mo Yinhua. He said, "Okay, let's go." As soon as he said this, Xian and the others were stunned for a moment. They looked at each other in astonishment for a while and shrugged their shoulders. Little Star must have seen something that was worth his attention, so this time he had to turn back. Mo Yinhua didn't care about what Yin Nuashing saw on the ordinary map. He nodded and said, "In that case, let's meet at the portal in the east of the city. I will talk to the Alliance first." Yin Nuashing nodded. He just wanted to borrow the portal of the Nightwalker Alliance. As for whether they would move together or alone when they reached the Ghost Forest, they would talk about it when they got there. Mo Yinhua reminded them a few more times. After a few more words, he hurried out the door. Seeing that his boat was on fire, Yin Nuashing and the others were a little speechless. "Nuashing, what did you see?" After Mo Yinhua left, Yuan-Shi couldn't wait to pat Yin Nuashing and ask curiously. Xian also came over and looked at the ladder. Yin Nuashing saw that these two guys were so enthusiastic after sending Mo Yinhua off. He smiled silently and took out the map. He enlarged it a lot, then pointed at the Ghost Forest in the Taiyuan region. Yuan-Shi looked in the direction he was pointing at. Under his fingertips, he saw a slender thing. If he looked carefully, he would find that it was the icon of a sword. It was a black sword. Although he couldn't see it clearly, he could feel a strange charm through the map. It was as if he wasn't looking at its icon, but the sword itself. The murderous aura was very strong. Kill! Suddenly, a series of battle cries resounded in his mind, and the sound of metal clashing resounded around him. He seemed to be standing on a battlefield dyed red, holding a black longsword in his hand as he fought with all his might to kill the enemy. That kind of battle intent that could sweep through the 9 heavens and 10 earths made his blood boil. "Yuan-Shi, why are you in a daze?" The sudden voice pulled him back from the illusion. Yuan-Shi shuddered. He looked carefully. This was not a battlefield where an army was buried. There was no blood-stained sky, and he wasn't holding that strange black sword in his hand. Phew! After taking a few quick breaths, Yuan-Shi swallowed his saliva and forced himself to calm down. After a while, when he had calmed down, He turned his gaze and saw Yin Nuoxing looking at him with her head tilted. He smiled and said, "I'm fine." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a deep breath and slowly recounted the events that had just transpired. Illusion. Yin Nuoxing listened in a daze. After listening, her gaze shifted to the sword. She looked back and forth for a long time, but she didn't see anything wrong with it. Then, she looked at Xian. The latter felt her gaze and gently shook her head, indicating that she didn't see anything wrong either. Yin Nuoxing rubbed her head and crossed her arms. After thinking for a while, she suddenly hammered her palm and said with a sudden realization, "I know, you must have held this sword in your previous life." Puffed. Yuan-Shi directly spat out a mouthful of water. Black lines drooped down from his forehead. His reincarnation disc was a golden color. Everyone should have seen it that day. Did you think that anyone would have experienced a previous life? It wasn't like you. Well, that's just what I said. As for why you can see that scene and have an illusion, I don't know. Maybe this sword is fated to be with you? Yin Nuoxing grinned and guessed casually. Black. What sword is this? Could it be in a divine sword record? Xian's lily-white hand lightly brushed across the ghostly forest. She stared at the icon. The icon of this sword was near the center of the ghostly forest. Perhaps this was a reason why so many forces attacked that place. I don't know. Other than the first two, I don't know the names of the other divine weapons in the divine sword record. Yin Nuoxing sighed. The only ones he knew were the Nether Void sword and Ling Hong's sword. It was said that the divine sword record recorded a total of 12 divine swords. However, he had never seen that record, so he didn't know what rank the black sword was. He didn't even know if it was a divine sword in the divine sword record. Sigh. The ancient books that I took from Rain Country didn't have such detailed records of rankings and records. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 401. Oh, pack up your things. Let's get going too. The portal in the east of the city. Yin Nuoxing stretched and groaned. She hugged Ming, who was sleeping in her arms, a little tighter. She turned around and looked at Xian and the others. She smiled and said, "We didn't leave anything behind, right?" Xian smiled and shook her head. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and quickly said, "Xing Xing, little Phoenix is gone." Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Only then did she remember that she forgot to tell them about this. When he was suppressing chaos, little Phoenix rushed into his soul. Now, the relationship between him, and it was a little like the soul link between him and the heavenly weapon. It was also a little like the soul link between the old Sly and the beast soul of the Thunderwolf that had been refined. He vaguely felt that he could mobilize little Phoenix's energy, but he did not refine the beast soul of the Phoenix, so it was not exactly the same. To be more precise, it should be symbiotic, just like the chaos that was lodging in his shadow. If it's little Phoenix, it's fine. Yin Nuoxing smiled and flipped her bangs up with her palm, revealing her smooth forehead. A moment later, a fiery red mark slowly appeared. It was not difficult to recognize it if one looked carefully. That fiery red mark was like a phoenix spreading its wings in flames. When this mark appeared, it made Yin Nuoxing look more charming. This is little Phoenix's life mark. When I was suppressing the vengeful spirit, it rushed into my soul and helped me a lot. At the same time, it inadvertently established this relationship. Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, hearing this, Zai came to a sudden realization. After all, the little phoenix had disappeared when it was sleeping on Yunua planet. The dark power of the resentful spirit was naturally restrained by the power of the mythological beasts, especially the phoenix, which leaned towards the light. TSK. Others refined beast souls to increase their own strength. You, on the other hand, directly established a connection with a divine beast. Hearing this, Yuan-Shi couldn't help but sigh with envy. He shook his head and sighed. This symbiotic method was much better than the method of refining a beast soul. Yin Nuoxing was equivalent to being able to borrow the phoenix's energy at any time and place. Moreover, it was all power. The refined beast soul could only obtain a part of the magic beast's power, and the phoenix would also be borrowing his power to slowly grow. It was killing two birds with one stone. There's actually such a thing. After listening to Yuan Shi, Yin Nuoxing blink his eyes. He had never thought about this. Back then, he had only sighed. He had picked up a mythical beast to raise and felt that it would be a great help in the future. But now he had directly thrown it into his body. Come to think of it, it was comical. In his body, there were weapons, fire, sealed energy, and now there was a small phoenix. Oh, there was also chaos residing in his shadow, stuffing all kinds of messy things into his body. Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but roll his eyes. This divine body was really not picky. I have a divine weapon, a divine flame, and a mythical beast. Oh, now I just like a magical thunder. While Yin Nuoxing was letting his imagination run wild, Yuan Shi was also thinking about this matter. He counted them with his fingers one by one, then clapped his hands, looked at the former, and grinned. My body is not a dustbin. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and slapped him. Aha! After laughing and fooling around for a while, they packed up their things and walked out of the hotel. Before going out, Yin Nuoxing repeatedly changed his face several times to avoid being recognized by people with bad intentions. Although Mo Yinhua had removed his arrest warrant in this city, it was still better to be careful. Moreover, it seemed that no one had noticed the people around the divine body. In the end, he changed his appearance. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Seeing Xian and the others' inexplicable gazes, he couldn't help but cover his face. After thinking about it, he changed back. Then he put on a black hat. After dawdling for a long time, he officially went out. A faint smell of the sea assaulted their nostrils. This transit city, standing on the sea, was not very big. It was only 1,000 miles long and wide, about the size of a small city. However, as a transit station on the vast East China Sea, it was enough. Ships often passed by here, so it didn't seem deserted. Of course, it couldn't be compared with those big cities on land. As Mo Yinhua said, when they came out of the hotel, they could see many people wearing the clothes of the Nightwalker Alliance. They were standing at the entrance of the streets and alleys. From time to time, someone would walk over and say a few words. Then, the people of the Nightwalker Alliance would point to a place, as if giving directions. For this humane setting, Yin Nuoxing silently gave a thumbs up. Then, she randomly found a person and asked where the teleportation door was. If it's the teleportation door, it's in the east, in the open space outside the city wall. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing thanked him and hurriedly flew in that direction with her people. The sound of quarreling echoed in the grand hall. Even though there was a door between them, the sound of the quarrel could be heard clearly from the outside. When the guards outside the door heard the voices echoing in their ears, they broke out in cold sweat. Their hands that were holding their spears trembled slightly. Enough! Suddenly, a reprimanding voice that was mixed with a majestic aura suddenly exploded out. Along with it, there was a loud sound of a palm fiercely slamming on the table, causing the entire hall to suddenly quiet down. Everyone shut their mouths and turned their gazes towards the man with a full beard that looked like a lion sitting at the head of the table. The Alliance has always been in a neutral state. For thousands of years, we have never provoked anyone for a little profit. Not now, not in the future. The strong voice was like the low roar of a lion. As soon as this voice fell, there were people who wanted to refute, but due to the identity of the person who spoke, they could only mutter their words like air leaking out of a hole. This matter is settled. If there's anyone who disagrees, go and argue with the great elder. Hearing the faintly discernible dissatisfaction, the man who spoke coldly snorted and fiercely glared at those people. With a flick of his sleeve, he abruptly stood up from his seat and walked out of the hall without looking back. Following the departure of the man, some faintly discernible voices resounded in the hall. The great elder has been missing for years. When he finally came back a few years ago, he was either in seclusion or playing missing. Look for you, my foot, sigh, forget it. His position is higher than ours. It's better not to blindly get involved in this matter, lest the great elder finds out. When that time comes, we'll have to bear the consequences. TCH, Mo Yinhua thinks too highly of himself. You have to know that he's not the only one who has the final say in the alliance. Elder Mo is right. Our alliance is neutral. We won't casually provoke anyone. It's better for everyone to know their place. Yes, and that little guy isn't as simple as you think. If you want to make a move, please use your brain first. If you make a move, haha, those people from the Chi family are the best examples. I don't think you need any more examples, right? I think that it's better to know someone than to annoy someone. It's a good choice to pull that little monster into our alliance. When these words were spoken, quite a number of people in the hall nodded their heads. However, there was a portion of people who frowned. It was likely that they were still unwilling to give up. Hey, if we don't make a move, it doesn't mean that others won't. Are we just going to watch this divine object fall into the hands of others? Instead of letting others get it, why don't we make a move first? In the hall, the young man who had been silent all this time sneered at this time. Elder Guan is right. Little Guan Xiao, this matter has already been decided. Let's not talk about it anymore. Before that voice of approval could fade away, an old voice slowly rang out in the hall. The voice did not come from the people seated in the hall. It was as if it had descended from the heavens, causing everyone who heard it to shiver. The hall also became abnormally quiet the moment this voice rang out. All right, it's decided. If there's nothing else, everyone can leave. The ghost forest hasn't been very peaceful recently. Right now, that place is more important. After a long silence, someone finally coughed dryly and hurriedly said. Everyone rolled their eyes. Even this person had spoken. Even if they had opinions, they couldn't say anything. Therefore, after this voice, everyone got up and left the hall. The young man named Guan Xiao also didn't speak. There was no expression on his face, but some strange colors flashed across the depths of his eyes. After sitting for a while, his body slowly disappeared. After everyone left the hall, the old man who mediated also slowly stood up. He looked at the ceiling and then at the tightly shut door of the hall. He sighed and seemed to be talking to himself. What do the Alliance chief and the others think? His voice had just sounded when a person whose entire body was wrapped in a gray robe suddenly appeared in the empty leader's seat of the large hall. He faintly said, "Quietly observe the changes." But the divine body and the ghost forest. Hearing this, the old man frowned. The old fingers rubbed on the armrest. The gray-robed man nodded and said, "Ignore it." The old man nodded. Then he laughed bitterly and said to himself, "Is our alliance going to hide from the world?" On the spacious Greenland, there were many tall stone doors. Rich spatial fluctuations covered this place. From time to time, people would rush out from the door. There were also people who hurriedly rushed into the whirlpool formed by spatial energy and disappeared. This was a square paved with green stone bricks. It stood less than a kilometer outside the city. However, this kind of teleportation door was different from the one Yin Nuoxing and the others saw. The teleportation door they saw in Xingming City was a fixed teleportation door. However, the teleportation door they saw here was a non-fixed teleportation door. They needed to find someone to carve the coordinates of the destination. Then, the teleportation door would recognize it and send it over. Comparing the two, the former was naturally more convenient. However, the latter was more casual. As long as one knew the coordinates, they could go wherever they wanted. Of course, carving the coordinates was a very technical and troublesome thing. Ordinary small forces couldn't casually set up a few of these teleportation doors like here. Yin Nuoxing's feet gently landed on the ground. He squatted down slightly and let out a light breath. He raised his head and looked at the green stone square. Then, he looked at the 300-meter wide teleportation doors. Although they were called teleportation doors, they were actually two stone pillars and an arched stone door. A spatial whirlpool slowly rotated in the center of the stone door, leading to an unknown area. This teleportation door is different from the one I saw. Yin Nuoxing murmured doubtfully when he saw the teleportation door that was different from his impression. Hearing this, Yuan Shi smiled and explained, "This teleportation door teleports by reading the coordinates. Compared to the fixed teleportation door, It's much more casual. However, its accuracy is relatively worse. What's the difference? Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows and asked with some lingering fear. Ever since he heard about the drawbacks of the spatial channel, he was very wary of these teleportation doors. The coordinates written may be 100 miles away from the place you want to go. In addition, it may also open the door in midair because the vertical coordinates are not easy to determine. It may even throw you into the ground. However, you won't be buried too deep. At most, you'll be buried a dozen meters. Yuanshi smiled wickedly. Fortunately, I won't die. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't like the spatial channel, where he was locked inside and thrown out of the celestial realm, it was fine. The last time he was locked in the spatial channel, it took a lot of effort. In the end, he rushed out with serious injuries. If it weren't for Ziya's protection, he would have died. There were many people standing in the Bluestone Square, but few people stood here for a long time. Those who came to the square were basically rushing to the teleportation door. Yin Nuoxing and the others didn't find Mo Yunhua's figure. Although they wanted to leave by themselves, the latter had already said that he would lead them there. Thus, they couldn't ignore him and could only wait for him to come over. Spiritual, godly physique. A disdainful sneer suddenly rang out behind them, causing the few of them who were bored to be stunned for a moment. Now, these 4 words had already become a taboo in Yin Nuoxing, and when it was unintentionally mentioned by others, their hearts would twitch a few times. Therefore, when this voice rang out, Yuanshi and the rest instantly became alert, and at the same time, from the corner of their eyes, as expected, they saw Yin Nuoxing pause there, and his reaction was a little slow. Woo! While Yin Nuoxing was in a daze when he heard this voice, a fist surrounded by lightning, and with a harsh sound of wind, blasted toward the back of his head. The violent energy coming toward him made Yin Nuoxing finally react. Just as he turned around and was about to throw a punch, Yuanshi, who was beside him, made a move first. He clenched his fingers into a fist, and with a strong wind element, he smashed it toward the fist. Bang! The 2 fists quickly met in midair, and a dull collision sound was heard. After a moment of silence, Yuanshi shook his arm fiercely to offset the hidden force. Then, he turned his arm, changed his fist into a palm, and hit the chest of the sneak attacker. Before his palm came into contact with that person, lightning flashed slightly, and that person instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already a few meters away. He smiled faintly and said, "Interesting," as expected of a god's spiritual body. After missing his attack, Yuanshi didn't chase after him. His eyes were a little gloomy as he looked at this person. The arm behind his back was slightly trembling. The strong and fierce lightning element had torn apart his wind element in an instant. This arm would probably be numb for a while. Yin Nuoxing turned around, and his arm inadvertently touched Yuanshi. A golden light flashed and disappeared. Then, Yuanshi realized that his right hand, which had lost its strength, had returned to normal at this moment. After quietly refining that little bit of lightning element energy, Yin Nuoxing raised his head and looked over. Less than 10 meters in front of them was a man in green clothes. The man was about 25 or 26 years old, and his face was very handsome. However, he always had a strange smile on his face, which ruined the scene. There was an unconcealable arrogance between his brows, and most importantly, there was a symbol of the Nightwalker Alliance on his clothes. The moment he saw that symbol, Yin Nuoxing's eyes immediately narrowed. Chapter 402. Someone from the Nightwalker Alliance? Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath, and her voice was slightly gloomy. That's right. The green-robed man revealed a slightly deranged smile. Looking at Yin Nuoxing's gradually darkening face, he suddenly thought of something and smiled. I'm Nightmare. As for my specific identity, the young man paused, tugged at his clothes, and said, if you still don't know, just ask the person next to you. You know him? Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing turned to look at Yuanshi in surprise. I don't know him, but I know him. Yuanshi shook his head and said, He's as famous as Qing Xian from the Qinghai Palace and Qi Haoyu from the Qi family. He's the divine son of the Nightwalker Alliance. The demonic arts he cultivates are very strange, and he's known as the person most qualified to become a god. It's said that he's been cultivating in seclusion in the Alliance, and very few people have seen him. Yuan Shi sighed. Little Xing, it looks like your physique has attracted a lot of attention. Mo Chio's temperament is a bit strange. He's a cultivation maniac and rarely pays attention to worldly possessions. For the sake of cultivation, he lived alone in the forbidden area of the Alliance for 3 years. The last time I heard news about him, he was only in the 3rd level of the Immortal Step, but now he's the same as me, in the 8th level. Moreover, there was a rumor that he killed a demigod all by himself. It's been a long time since then. I'm afraid. I think. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Once one reached the immortal rank, one's cultivation speed would slow down slightly. Until today, she hadn't crossed the 3rd level. Now, she wanted to slap Qi Wen to death. If she hadn't said those words in Divine Sky City that day, she wouldn't have attracted the attention of a group of strange people. She wouldn't have been stared at by strange gazes, and she wouldn't have been visited like now. Aya, you said it so clearly. Are you my fan? Nightmare laughed a few times. His gaze skipped Yuan Shi and looked at Yin Nuoxing. His dark eyes showed some excitement, and he said, the spiritual, godly physique or something. Interesting. Although the elders didn't want to do anything to you and said they wouldn't care about you, but, I want to play with you. The moment the last syllable fell, Nightmare suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yin Nuoxing. His aura suddenly exploded and blew Yuan Shi and the others away from Yin Nuoxing. The latter saw Nightmare's crazed smile, made him sigh. His hands slowly clenching his fists, a little bit of light purple energy quietly condensed on his fist. The spiritual godly physique, the divine physique. Let's see if it's really like what they say, that it's just a physique that relies on weapons to survive. Nightmare laughed wildly. The fist in his hand was wrapped in a layer of black mist. Without any fancy moves, he punched at Yin Nuoxing. The majestic energy condensed into a spiral around his fist, and a few cracks appeared on the bluestone floor. Little Star, being pushed away by Mo Yin from Yin Nuoxing's side, to seeing Mo Yin rush in front of Yin Nuoxing in the blink of an eye, Yin anxiously called out. However, when he saw Mo Yan's somewhat angry and unhappy expression, he immediately calmed down. Yuan Shi also came to his senses and stood in front of her. He turned around and smiled at her. There are some things that he still needs to solve himself. Don't worry, Little Star isn't a reckless person. Zia nodded. She also knew this. However, Yuan Shi also sensed that the water and earth elements between heaven and earth seemed to be quietly condensing. Both of you are doing whatever you want. Yin Nuoxing, who was standing still, suddenly raised her arm. Rich and dazzling golden energy surged out of her body and gathered on the 4 small talismans on her fist. The talismans were dyed with a layer of gold, and the energy contained in them increased by a lot at this moment. Looking at the incoming black fist, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. She stomped her feet on the ground, swung her body and arm, and smashed her fist fiercely. Crushing fist, level 4. Seeing the changes on Yin Nuoxing's fist, Nightmare laughed excitedly. The pitch-black divine energy on his fist quickly condensed, and he shouted, Black God Seal. Bang! Boom! The 2 fists, which were mixed with majestic energy, suddenly met in midair. A dull sound of impact, like muffled thunder, exploded on the ground. Then, a dazzling golden wave suddenly erupted from the point of contact. The strong wind swept up a large amount of dust and blew a long scar on the bluestone floor. The sudden loud commotion caused everyone in the greenstone plaza to shift their gazes over, after which they saw a figure suddenly jump out from the surging dust wave. The figure spun in midair and slowly landed on the ground. His right arm, which was covered in tattered green clothes, was slightly trembling. Ha ha! As expected, Looks like he's not as weak as the rumors say. Nightmare squeezed his right arm and laughed a few times. He didn't seem to care that he was at a disadvantage. Instead, he became even more excited. That's the divine son of the Nightwalker Alliance? He came to this place? One of the people who is qualified to participate in the divine battle. It's said that he hasn't appeared in the world for many years. Divine son? Why is he here? Isn't he cultivating in the spirit fantasy realm? Could it be that he came out of seclusion? But why did he start fighting as soon as he came out? And he's even injured? After Mo Yin appeared, it caused waves of discussion. This was a character that was already famous far and wide. No one would have thought that he would appear here, let alone make a move here. After hearing these whispers, Nightmare suddenly stopped smiling. He turned his head and shouted at those people, "Hey, those who are whispering, I'll kill you." Hearing these overbearing words, everyone quickly shut their mouths. Although there were people with good strength present, they might not necessarily be able to fight against Nightmare. After all, the latter was rumored to have killed a master who was close to the demigod level. Moreover, the latter was from the Nightwalker Alliance. Even if they wanted to give face to this force, they would have to think twice. All of a sudden, it became quiet. Nightmare snorted softly. Just as he turned his head, a light breeze blew out from the dust cloud. Then, everyone saw that the dust cloud that was flying in the sky gradually calmed down. The wave of dust gradually dispersed, and Yun Nuoxing's figure slowly appeared. Her unscathed appearance surprised everyone. Even her hat was properly worn, and nothing could be seen from her calm face. "Huh, interesting, interesting. You're a good opponent. Yes, that's right. I like it." Seeing that Yun Nuoxing was unscathed, Nightmare laughed excitedly. This made the people of the Nightwalker Alliance very surprised. They had never seen their young master so excited. Hearing the last 3 words, Yun Nuoxing suddenly shuddered. She wiped the goosebumps on her arm with her palm and quickly took a step back. Clenching her right fist, Yun Nuoxing looked at the layer of faintly discernible golden light on her arm that was gradually dimming. She took a light breath. She was very clear about the strength of the light element. Usually, when she fought with Yuan Shi, the light barrier protecting her body was not broken. However, Nightmare's punch had pushed her to the limit. Interesting. Your clothes are not simple either. Seeing that Yun Nuoxing was unscathed, Nightmare laughed excitedly again. Again, a faint black aura emerged from Nightmare's body. His black hair fluttered without any wind, and his eyes emitted a strange light. Countless black lightning bolts surged out from under his feet. In a breath's time, they covered the surrounding 100 feet. Nightmare, who was in the middle of it, had his aura explosively increase. His feet were a foot off the ground. His wriggling hand held a ball of pitch-black lightning. At this moment, he looked just like a god of lightning. However, this lightning was a little strange. Lightning element? It doesn't look like it, but looking at the ball of energy that was constantly flickering with light, Yun Nuoxing frowned. Not to mention the color of a lightning element. The degree of violence of that ball of energy was not something that an ordinary lightning element could achieve. Mo Yan's aura soared for a moment before it slowly came to a stop. Mo Yan excitedly stared at Yun Nuoxing. His bright red tongue licked his lips as he laughed out loud. With a clench of his hand, a completely black sickle appeared in a flash. A lightning glow lingered on the black sickle. The treasure of the Nightwalker Alliance, the black sickle of evil. Its entire body is made from the rank 8 material dark black stone. It is forged from 7 elements. Although the material itself does not contain any elements, under the long-term influence of several elements, it has been tainted with some elemental energy. When it is swung, the energy of 7 elements will be released together. An ordinary expert will not be able to resist it. The moment the black sickle appeared, it was recognized by the people present. Immediately, cries of surprise rang out. "Aya, aya," always exposing other people's secrets. This is so boring. Holding the black sickle of evil, Nightmare laughed loudly. He casually swung it a few times, causing an ear-piercing sonic boom. The overflowing energy and the power of the sonic boom caused several cracks to appear on the hard square. Yin Nuoxing's gaze paused on the sickle that was as long as two people, then looked at Nightmare, who seemed to have entered a frenzied state. His face trembled a few times. The former, who had erupted with his full aura, was indeed at the 8th level of the immortal realm. However, he gave off a strange feeling, as if he was a little erratic, under those crazy gazes. Yin Nuoxing sighed. With a light wave of his arm, a huge purple-black sword appeared in a flash. He held the Netheruin's sword in his hand and pointed it diagonally at the ground. The sword was wide enough to block a person, but it was sheathed in an even larger scabbard. The pitch-black scabbard looked very heavy. Nightmare's smile grew wider when he saw Yin Nuoxing draw the Netheruin's sword. It was rumored that the weapons carried by the spirit receiving divine body were not simple objects. Now that he saw it, he could feel how extraordinary it was. However, my black sickle of evil is not to be trifled with. Even if it's a divine weapon, it will be torn down. Nightmare bared his teeth at Yin Nuoxing, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He suddenly stomped his foot on the ground, causing a sonic boom to resound throughout the square. His body shot toward Yin Nuoxing like a black arrow. Yin Nuoxing jumped back a small step when she saw this. She tightly gripped the Netheruin's sword with both hands and swung it forward with all her strength. The huge sword carried an enormous pressure, splitting the air in front of it into two halves. Sonic booms resounded continuously. Just as the huge sword was swung forward, a huge sickle suddenly appeared and collided with the huge sword. Clang! The huge sword and the sickle collided, causing a metallic sound to resound throughout the square. Yin Nuoxing and Nightmare quickly retreating to a safe distance with lightning speed. Black and golden lights lit up the square. As expected of light, the element of light. After stabilizing his body, Nightmare glanced at Yin Nuoxing, who was wrapped in light particles. He could not help but laugh loudly. His hands, which were holding the huge sickle, trembled slightly. You have the element of light. I can use the element of lightning. I won't fall behind in terms of speed. Nightmare laughed loudly. Silver blue lightning suddenly lingered around the black sickle in his hand. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, the pitch-black color was gradually covered by a silver blue color. Those who were sensitive could even feel that the element of lightning that filled the square seemed to have quietly increased by a lot. When the sickle had completely turned silver blue, Nightmare grinned and charged forward. Then, thunderous roars resounded. He flashed like lightning and appeared above Yin Nuoxing's head. Lightning flash. Chi! The dazzling lightning became crazy at this moment. It continuously exploded from the black, baleful sickle. Silver blue and pitch black intertwined. It looked as though Nightmare was holding a thundercloud. It was a terrifying sight. As soon as the huge thundercloud appeared, it descended from the sky with shocking lightning. It directly bombarded Yin Nuoxing. At that moment, the strong light seemed to have turned into a sun. Everyone only had time to close their eyes. Sword God technique. Yin Nuoxing's eyes paused for a moment when he sensed the lightning that covered the sky. He waved the Nethervoid sword in his hand like the wind, leaving behind blurry traces in the air. In the end, they all converged into one position, and faint purple flames quietly rose from those afterimages. 10,000 transformations, sword body. With a low shout, the afterimages formed by the Netherworld ruined sword seemed to come alive at this moment. They danced wildly along the following trajectory. Sword Chi burst out from the afterimages like crescent moons. Yin Nuoxing also danced with all her might like a large windmill. Boom! Thousands of Sword Chi had just shot out when the huge thundercloud came crashing down. Finally, it violently smashed onto the Sword Chi. Immediately, the thundercloud was sliced into countless pieces. The Sword Chi shot toward the sky. However, just as the thundercloud was sliced, it was like a broken lotus root that was glued together again. However, the lightning glow on it had become much dimmer. As the sword chi shot out endlessly, the huge thundercloud also became a little illusory. The lightning energy that it contained was rapidly dissipating. Lightning flash, shining sun flash. Devil Nightmare's smile faded slightly when he sensed Yun Nuoxing's sword chi that seemed to be both offensive and defensive. Only those who were within it would know how terrifying the sword chi's destructive power was. However, his smile had just faded when it bloomed once more. After that, he let out a loud shout and charged into the sky. The giant scythe in his hand transformed into a brilliant sun as his body suddenly shot explosively towards the thunderclouds below. Boom! The sickle swooped down from the sky with Devil Nightmare in tow. Countless bolts of lightning streaked across the sky along with the sword chi. The densely packed sword chi did not appear thin at all, but it could not stop the lightning from swooping down from the sky. Netherworld ruins. Yun Nuoxing stopped what he was doing when he saw the dazzling bolt of lightning. However, the sword chi around him was still dancing rapidly. He raised the Netherworld ruins sword high up. Endless starlight and dazzling energy poured into the Netherworld ruins sword. Just as he was about to defeat Nightmare with a single strike, a loud shout made him pause. Stop! A furious shout exploded from the square like a lion. It quickly spread throughout the square. Then, everyone saw a figure fly over from the horizon. In less than the blink of an eye, he had rushed between Yun Nuoxing and Nightmare. A majestic aura erupted. Boom! Yun Nuoxing and Nightmare were stunned by the sudden appearance of a third aura. They didn't have time to pay attention to the other party. They hurriedly gathered their energy and held their weapons horizontally in front of them. When the aura came into contact with them, it completely canceled out the energy around them. It turned into a strong gust of wind that forcefully pushed them away. After his body landed on the ground, Yin finally saw the person who had arrived. His eyebrows twitched without leaving a trace, after which he grinned and said, Aya, Elder Mo is really too much. Disturbing other people's mood is not the way of a gentleman. Chapter 403. The wind and dust gradually dispersed. When everything calmed down, everyone had time to take a look. At this time, the square had been destroyed by the energy just now. There was not a single intact place to be found. There were traces of sword energy everywhere. Yun Nuoxing's sword energy just now did not completely hit Nightmare. A large part of it flew out in the shape of a fan in front of him. Fortunately, it did not hurt any innocent people. The teleportation portal in the square was not affected by the battle between the two of them. This made many people sigh in relief. If the teleportation portal was destroyed, there would be no teleportation portal within a radius of millions of miles. At that time, they would become vagrants on an isolated island. After letting out a sigh of relief, everyone saw that there was a young man between Yun Nuoxing and Nightmare. It was the uninvited guest who had come from outside the square to stop the battle. The young man had a lion-shaped beard, and he gave off a dignified feeling. Coupled with Nightmare's shout just now, everyone knew who this uninvited guest was. It was the manager of the Nightwalker Alliance's transit station, Mo Yunhua. Really? I was just having fun fighting with this guy. Elder Mo, you're such a disappointment. After seeing the newcomer, Nightmare muttered unhappily. However, Mo Yunhua was his elder, so he could not say anything. After putting away the black sickle, he crossed his arms in front of his chest and turned his head away. He did not even look at Mo Yunhua. Hearing this, Mo Yunhua laughed bitterly. His gaze was a little bitter as he looked at the huge sword in Yun Nuoxing's hand. He laughed bitterly in his heart. If I didn't stop it, this square would be gone. He could feel that the sword contained a lot of energy before it was withdrawn. If it exploded, the square would explode, and even Nightmare would be injured. Although Nightmare was very unhappy with him and many people in the Alliance, he was still the son of God of the Alliance. If he was seriously injured here, it would be difficult for him to explain. Seeing Mo Yunhua's gaze, Yun Nuoxing shrugged. Only gods could feel the energy contained in the Netherworld Ruins sword. However, he did not intend to use his full strength just now. He knew what the consequences would be. It was just a joke. Forget it. Nightmare snorted. He knew that the fight couldn't go on. He twisted his neck, glanced at Mo Yunhua with a strange look, and then looked at Yin Nuoxing. He smiled evilly and said, "You are? Oh, Yin Nuoxing, right? I will remember this name. Since you are here, you must be going to the Ghost Forest. Well, then, we will meet again." After saying that, he ignored everyone's strange gazes and flew directly towards a teleportation gate. Then he took out something from his sleeve and plunged into the teleportation gate, disappearing. What was even stranger was that the people from the Nightwalker Alliance were a little surprised when they heard Nightmare's words. They knew his temperament very well, and they knew very well that there were only a few people in Divine Prefecture who could make him say such words among the younger generation. He was not interested in anyone else. Yin Nuoxing? Why did this name sound so familiar? Have I heard of it somewhere? But I don't think there is such a name among the younger generation of divine princes. Could he be a disciple of a master? Could he be the divine prince of some hidden force? When everyone came back to their senses, the first thing they thought of was the name that Mo Yin had mentioned. Hearing this sound, Yin Nuoxing broke out in a cold sweat. Zi Yin and the others also had the same reaction. They were afraid that they would be recognized in this place with so many people. As soon as these voices came out, Mo Yinhua took action. He quickly ran to a teleportation gate, pulled a person aside, and said something. Then he took a stone from that person's hand and rushed to Yin Nuoxing. "Little brother, let's go. We will go to the Ghost Forest first. Let's ignore the people of the Alliance." After saying that, he didn't care whether Yin Nuoxing heard him or not. He waved his sleeve and took a few people with him. Then, under many strange gazes, he rushed into the teleportation gate and disappeared. After they disappeared for a while, someone finally thought of what happened in the northern wilderness not long ago and suddenly shouted, "Yin Nuoxing, he is the spiritual, godly physique. The person with the strange physique who is being chased by the Chi family? I didn't expect it to be that young man." The spiritual, godly physique hunting order in the city suddenly disappeared a month ago. Is the Nightwalker Alliance trying to befriend the godly physique? No, I think that's just Castellamo's idea. Didn't you see Nightmare looking for trouble with that young man? I think this matter is not the decision of the entire alliance. Since it's the spiritual, godly physique, is he also going to the Ghost Forest? Hey, legend has it that the spiritual, godly physique has a secret connection with the Ghost Forest. Moreover, there are many people going to the Ghost Forest this time. I'm afraid there will be a very grand show going on this time. What exactly is there? So many big forces are rushing there. The Ghost Forest is the most famous life forbidden zone in the Taiyuan region. In the face of enough benefits, any danger is not worth mentioning. Even though this old man doesn't know what it is, according to the rumors, a divine weapon has appeared there. I presume that many people are aiming for it, and the spirit-receiving godly physique should not be an exception. At this time, in the Taiyuan region, which was an astronomical distance away from the East Sea, on a mountain a few hundred miles away from the Ghost Forest, a blue vortex suddenly opened slowly in the sky. Then, it quickly expanded to a width of 100 meters. When it expanded to the limit, the teleportation door fluctuated slightly. A few figures fell out of the door and slowly landed on the mountain below. The huge teleportation door gradually dissipated. Yin Nuoxing's feet gently landed on the mountain, and only then did he open his eyes. He looked around, but he didn't see the forest from his memories. He was a little surprised, and when he thought back to what Yuanxi had said, he hurriedly took out the treasure map. He saw that they were indeed in the Source Peak region, but they were still a little far from the forest on the map. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, it's a few hundred miles away from the Ghost Forest, but it's not that far. After all, it was made in a hurry. It's already not bad to be able to achieve such accuracy. Looking around, Mo Yinhua nodded and said. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. If a few hundred miles away was considered not bad, then wouldn't it be a few thousand miles away? He could not help but smile bitterly at the feeling that arose in his heart. Thinking back, he had gone through many twists and turns to go to the divine prefecture from the Taiyuan region. He had even borrowed 2 teleportations to arrive there. Now he was back in a blink of an eye. Moreover, it was so close to his original starting point. When I'm free, I'll go back to Xingling City to take a look. Uncle Qin, I don't know if they've returned. How are little Yu and the others? As soon as he returned to the Taiyuan region, Yun Nuoxing recalled many things. That day, he had descended from the sky and stayed in the Qin family for a period of time that was neither long nor short. Let's go. From here, it'll take less than half a day's journey. We should be able to arrive at dusk. Mo Yanhua turned his head and looked at Yun Nuoxing. Coming back to his senses, Yun Nuoxing looked at the map and collected his slightly melancholy mood. He nodded and said, "In that case, let's go. Along the way, we'll collect more information about the ghost forest." Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and looked towards the northwestern direction, after which he waved his hand and his feet gently pressed on the ground. His body slowly drifted away. Behind him, the few people also followed closely, after which they turned into a few light figures and disappeared into the horizon. Yun Nuoxing and the others rushed towards the ghost forest in the northwest direction. Although there was still a long way to go, they could sense a faint sense of tension from the towns below. They could also see groups of people wearing the same style of clothing gathered together. Mo Yanhua could not recognize those symbols at the moment. The only thing he could be sure of was that those people were not from the Taiyuan region. Some people should have rushed over from other regions. I saw people from the Ultimate Plane region. There are also people from the Divine Prefecture. However, why aren't they going over? Mo Yanhua scratched his head in confusion when he saw those people gathering in the towns far away from the ghost forest. Now, many people's eyes were focused on the Taiyuan region, including some well-known first-rate forces. Yun Nuoxing guessed that the Qi family would also come here for a gathering. Perhaps Qianqian won't come too, right? Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but smile bitterly when he suddenly thought of the young girl who always clung to him. When he was at the Tana's Water God Temple, she had come out of nowhere. This time, the disturbance in the ghost forest was very big. The Yuan family should also make a move. Thinking of this, Yun Nuoxing turned his head towards Yuan Shi. However, he saw that the latter also slowly turned his head. They could see some helplessness in each other's eyes. Then, they smiled bitterly together. Is this the Taiyuan region? It doesn't seem to be any different from the Divine Prefecture. Mei Mao glanced at the towns passing by below with some curiosity. Xian said softly. Before Yun Nuoxing appeared, she had never left Xingyu City. She was somewhat looking forward to the outside world. When she learned that the Taiyuan region was Yun Nuoxing's hometown, she was even more curious. Yun Nuoxing smiled. He really didn't think about the difference between the Taiyuan region and the Divine Prefecture. It was probably just a difference in size. The Ghost Forest was located in the extreme northwest of the Sourcepeak region. It was surrounded by a desolate mountain forest. After inquiring about the situation in some towns, it seemed that the fog-shrouded forest had unknowingly expanded by a lot. By the time someone reacted, they saw that the distance between the fog-shrouded forest and the nearest town had shrunk from the original 10,000 li to less than 100 li. Moreover, the speed of expansion seemed to be gradually accelerating. The people in that town were also immediately driven away by some major forces. Yun Nuoxing also received some other information that made his brows twitch. A chill gradually gathered between his brows. This was because, as expected, there were traces of the Qi family among the people who had come. They seemed to be one of the most active groups. At the same time, there were also the 5 people from the 12-star palaces who had inexplicably targeted him. From this information, Yun Nuoxing also learned that most of the experts in the Taiyuan region were currently gathered in the town shrouded in fog. Although that place had already become the territory of the Ghost Forest, it was only the outermost area. Compared to directly entering the forest, everyone wanted to settle some matters in the outermost area. At the very least, it was much safer there. The ghost forest was one of the most mysterious life forbidden zones in the Taiyuan region. None of the experts in the world would give up on the news that spread from there, even if there was only a 1 in a million chance that the news was true. However, there was indeed no news about what exactly had appeared in the forest. Yun Nuashing knew that the important figures had likely cut off the transmission of information. And now, there were already no less than 10 great factions gathered there. Yun Nuashing did not show much emotion after receiving this information, which was neither particularly useful nor very good. He continued to travel at the same speed. Although he could quickly reach the place using the light element if he wanted to, he did not appear to be in a hurry. Hence, Mo Yinhua and the rest also flew slowly behind him. Far outside the ghost forest, between two tall and straight mountain peaks, a town built beside the mountain quietly stood. The dense fog was slightly blown away by the wind, revealing an incomparably huge barrier that enveloped the entire town. Outside the town, the originally lush green trees, after coming into contact with the dense fog, turned slightly pale, as if they had been frozen, or as if their vitality had suddenly disappeared. There was an extremely domineering palace at the center of the town. At the center of the palace was an exceptionally grand hall. At this moment, there were quite a number of people seated in the hall. Noisy voices stacked on top of one another, causing one to involuntarily feel irritated upon hearing them. This is already the 5th time traces of that thing have appeared. It is clearly at the center of the Death Spirit mountain range. How long do we have to wait here before we can make a move? You're in a hurry. You can't wait for the entire mountain range to be yours. Do you think the ghost forest is a forest planted by your family? Didn't you see how many of our lives were harvested there a while ago? The flowing blood is enough to dye the entire sky of the ghost forest red. Didn't we come here to investigate the reason for the sudden expansion of the ghost forest? What the hell is that thing that seems to have suddenly awakened? Now that things have come to this point, I don't think anyone has a good answer to pass on to their respective sect masters. Why don't we reach a consensus on whether to enter that damn place or give up? Enter? It's easy for you to say. Didn't your family's elite troops also get wiped out? How can we still go in? What about the Chi family? Didn't they bring the eternal weapon over? Chi Haoyu frowned a little irritably as he watched the people in the hall quarrel until their faces turned red. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. He sighed and said, "The third elder and the others are currently investigating in the ghost Chi forest. Everyone, please don't hold the Chi Emperor's sword." Now Chi Haoyu was the agent of the Chi family. Among this group of old men, he had the right to speak. Everyone acquiesced to his existence. After all, he had a strong background. Since the master was not here, it was not a big deal for him to be an agent. Hearing this faint voice, the noise in the hall stopped abruptly. Almost everyone frowned. After seeing the danger of the ghost forest here, many forces had joined forces. Entering such a ferocious place, they naturally brought some protective celestial devices, but none of them was as reliable as a real eternal weapon. Now, perhaps the only eternal weapon was not here, so some people did not have a clue. Of course, some people present sneered vaguely when they heard this news. On the surface, they said that they were investigating the reason for the expansion of the ghost forest. In fact, everyone knew what it was for. At this time, the Chi family left alone and said that they were going to investigate. Who knew what they were up to? Ignoring the strange thoughts of the crowd, Chi Haoyu sighed. He seemed to think of something, and his thin lips slowly drew an arc. Chapter 404. In the boundless blue sky, there was the sound of rushing wind. Then a few black figures grew larger. In just a few breaths, they rode on the wind and arrived at a green peak. That's strange. The ghost forest wasn't this big back then. I remember there was a city nearby. After landing on the mountain peak, Yin Nuashing looked around. His gaze finally stopped at the fog on the horizon, and he frowned. According to the information I got from the Alliance, the ghost forest seems to have expanded. This has never happened before. The city you mentioned might be where they are gathering now. Mo Yinhua paused and continued. On the surface, the Chi family and the others are here to investigate the reason for the expansion of the ghost forest, but secretly. Mo Yinhua smiled strangely. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. Weren't they secretly after the unknown divine weapon? He stretched and cracked his knuckles. He muttered to himself. Besides the local forces in the Taiyuan region, there were also people from other regions who were paying attention to the ghost forest. The Qi family and the others were naturally here for the divine weapon. The number of experts gathered was definitely not small. According to Mo Yunhua's information, the Qi family could casually send out very powerful experts. There were Qi Yu and the other three who had dealt with Yin Nuoxing before. They were all experts at the Emperor of the Underworld level. The Qi family won't send out 3 or 4 Emperor of the Underworld at once, right? Yin Nuoxing hesitated and suddenly asked. A while ago, he saw Qi Yu and Qi Wen appear frequently. Now, that he could use the divine weapon to deal with one of them, it was hard to say if a few more came. In addition, the Qi family hated him. It was hard to say if they wouldn't plot against him in this place where good and bad people mix together. I'm not too sure. The Qi family did a good job of keeping it a secret. According to the news, only Qi Wen came. As for whether there are stronger experts in the dark, we don't know either, Mo Yunhua said hesitantly. All right. Yin Nuoxing nodded slightly and sighed. Let's go. The target is right in front of us. Let's go and see how that city is doing now. Yin Nuoxing sighed, after which she spread out her hands and smiled at the few of them. The tip of her foot gently pressed on the ground, and the overflowing wind element lifted her up. Her body flew forward as Mo Yinhua and the rest followed closely behind her. Within a few breaths, Yin Nuoxing had charged into the fog. The first thing he did when he entered was to straighten his collar. When a gust of cold wind blew past, he felt an icy pain in his bones. He sighed and muttered to himself. After a few years, this place has become even colder. The first time he entered the Ghost Chi Forest, he was only a mortal realm cultivator and could barely resist the cold here. As time passed, he was now an immortal realm cultivator and was much stronger than before. He also had the purple night flame to protect him, but he didn't expect it to still give him a cold hug. The cold here is not something an ordinary cultivator can resist. Even your divine flame might not be able to disperse it easily. Mo Yunhua smiled as he blew a breath of cold air into his palm. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. With a flip of his palm, a ball of light purple flames slowly rose up. He really didn't believe that the purple night dark flame, which was comparable to the top 20 of the divine flames list, wouldn't be able to do anything to this cold mist. Seeing the pale purple flame emerging from his palm, Mo Yunhua smiled silently. However, before he could open his mouth to say anything, he was surprised to see that the cold fog lingering around his body was isolated 100 feet away at this moment. His vision also gradually became clear due to the dissipation of the fog. After being surprised for a moment, Mo Yunhua looked suspiciously at the proud Yin Nuoxing. He then looked at the swaying flame and said, "This divine flame is a bit strong." From the information he obtained, he deduced that even the divine flames ranked below the 100th place couldn't do anything to the cold in the Ghost Chi Forest. Of course, he would never have thought that this flame was the purple night flame, which was ranked 90. Furthermore, it was a divine flame that had been strengthened by Godhead. Naturally, it wasn't something an ordinary divine flame could compare to. Yin Nuoxing snorted proudly. His gaze slowly swept across the surroundings. After sensing for a bit, he said, "I don't sense any signs of life nearby." After a pause, he continued, "It should be said that within the range of my senses, there is no one." Yin Nuoxing had the wood element in his body. The dense wood energy in the Ghost Chi Forest allowed him to sense the situation very far away. However, he didn't sense any signs of humans or beasts. The forest was also abnormally quiet. Hearing this, Mo Yunhua took out a map from his sleeve and slowly unrolled it. After looking at it for a while, he raised his head and looked around. In the end, he calmly put it away. How could he look at a map in a place where his vision couldn't reach more than 100 meters? Scratching his head in distress, Yin Nuoxing looked at Xian and Yuan Shi. After receiving his gaze, the two of them shook their heads. They couldn't sense anything either. Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing lowered his head. Seeing that Ming was still sleeping soundly in his arms, he sighed and muttered, "Do I have to set fire again? That won't be necessary." Mo Yinhua shook his head and slowly took out a token. He waved it in front of him and said with a smile, "The last time we came to the Ghost Chi Forest, we made a mark. This token can lead us to the place where we once marched to. However, this way, we won't be able to go to that city." After saying that, he looked at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing was stunned and nodded. Right now, they had no sense of direction at all. The cold fog was just pure cold fog. Even the Netherworld Ruins sword couldn't break it. As for setting fire to the mountain, it would be too noisy. It would be great if they had something to show them the way. Seeing this, he gently squeezed his hand, and the token broke with a crack. Then, a faint red light floated out of the token and stopped in front of them for a few seconds. Then, it flew in a direction. Mo Yinhua smiled and waved at Yin Nuoxing and the others. He took the lead and flew in the direction of the red light. Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and didn't think much. She also followed. Behind her, Xian and the other two hurriedly followed. "Last time, where did you march to last time?" Yin Nuoxing asked on the way. "Let me think." Mo Yunhua touched his chin and thought for 2 minutes before saying, "I think it was in front of a lake. I could faintly hear the sound of water. That place was not far from the center of the Broken Spirit Mountain range. However, we couldn't go any closer. There seemed to be a force protecting. No, it was isolating the Broken Spirit Mountain range from the outside world. Once we entered, we would die." "Together?" Yin Nuoxing asked again. "Yes, there's strength in numbers. Although some people didn't want to, they still chose to band together for their own safety. However, the result was still very tragic." Speaking of this, Mo Yinhua's expression changed slightly. He remembered that during the last operation, even the people of their alliance suffered heavy casualties. He himself almost died there. Because of this, the current progress has been delayed. Because we couldn't reach a conclusion, some forces want to withdraw their troops. However, others haven't given up yet. Among them, this includes the Qi family, Mo Yunhua said softly. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing fell silent. Seeing his silence, Mo Yunhua patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry, it'll be fine. In this extremely dangerous place, the Qi family and the others definitely won't do anything to you." The corners of Yin Nuoxing's mouth curved into a helpless smile. Then, he looked at Mo Yinhua strangely. The Nightwalker Alliance would not casually participate in the competition between other forces. However, from the way he talked about the Qi family, it seemed to be filled with hostility. He didn't know if it was an illusion or if the latter had some grudges with the Qi family. Of course, Yin Nuoxing wouldn't take the initiative to ask about this. As they chatted, Yin Nuoxing and the others followed the red light into the depths of the ghost forest. In the quiet forest, there wasn't even the sound of the wind. What appeared in their line of sight was the same white fog. They didn't even know where they were flying to. Even the sky was blocked by heavy fog, and they couldn't see the sun. Gradually, the red light slowed down. Yin Nuoxing and the others also became slightly alert. Their sharp eyes swept across the surroundings from time to time. When the red light completely stopped, he saw that they had stopped at a relatively flat place. Not far away, he could vaguely see a slight slope. However, it wasn't the Death Mountain Range. The Death Mountain Range was a dark mountain peak. What they saw in front of them was a grassland with a little bit of green. The red light led Yin Nuoxing and the others here. Soon it dissipated. Yin Nuoxing looked around and pricked up his ears. He didn't hear any sound of water. When we go up this mountain, we will be close to the Death Mountain Range. The lake is also at the top of this mountain. This is where we stopped for the first time, Mo Yinhua explained. Light! While he was explaining, Yin Nuoxing's eyes kept looking at the top of the mountain that couldn't be seen. When he finished speaking, he murmured, "What light?" Mo Yinhua was stunned. the energy of light, the light element. Yin Washing took a deep breath and said, I feel a very rich light energy. Mo Yinhua frowned. The last time he came here, he didn't feel any light element energy. Could it be that there was another mutation at this moment? Let's go up and take a look first. Yuanshi suggested. He lifted his foot and was about to walk over there. Wait! Just as he was about to walk up the slope, two shouts sounded at the same time. Then, Yuanshi was pulled back by two tyrannical forces. When he turned his head, he saw Yun Nuoshing's light purple eyes. At this moment, they had become as gorgeous as gemstones. It gave him a feeling that he had been seen through. It's dangerous. It's not so easy to go up here. Yun Nuoshing's face was dignified. He picked up a branch and threw it on the slope in front of him. As soon as the branch fell on the grass, a thick fog rose up and submerged the branch. When the fog drifted to the other side, there was no trace of the branch. Seeing that the branch suddenly disappeared, Yuanshi couldn't help but be stunned. Yin Nuoshing didn't stop. He took out a good grade stone and threw on the slope. However, as soon as the stone landed, a large fog rose from the grass. The thick fog quickly submerged the place, and the range of vision was reduced by a lot. When the thick fog slightly dissipated, everyone looked at the place where the stone had landed. There was no trace of it. A 6th-level magic stone was thrown out by Yu so casually. Seeing that the stone had disappeared, Mo Yunhua was a little distressed. That fist-sized 6th-level magic stone was worth at least hundreds of thousands. He had just thrown it out with a shake of his hand. Yun Nuoshing spread out his hands, looked at the slope, and said, It feels like it has been assimilated into the fog. In other words, it has been decomposed. What do you think? Well, that's more or less what I mean. We old guys have been researching for a long time, but we can only guess in this direction. Any god that walks and won't even let out a scream. Mo Yinhua smiled and said a very scary thing, which made Yuanshi shiver. However, it won't be a problem to go in with a god weapon. Last time, we went up with a god weapon, Mo Yinhua said again. As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Nuoshing simply took out the Ling Hongjian. The self-created domain opened and enveloped everyone. As soon as the domain opened, everyone felt that the space within 100 feet around them had calmed down. Even the fog had dissipated. Ling Hongjian, TSK. It can separate two spaces, as expected of the sword of time and space. Mo Yinhua couldn't help but say. Although he knew that Yin Nuoshing had such a divine item, this was the first time he had seen it. Clapping his hands, Yin Nuoshing reminded them, Don't leave the Ling Hongjian's domain. Even gods can be decomposed here. Everyone nodded. The test just now had made them tremble with fear. They didn't want to experience it. They followed Yin Nuoshing carefully. They were just short of stepping on his footsteps. After walking for a quarter of an hour, the slope gradually became flat. They didn't know how far they had walked, but the fog in front of them was getting thicker. Even Ling Hongjian's domain had unknowingly shrunk by half. The pressure outside the domain was frighteningly strong. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Yin Nuoshing frowned. With a flip of his right hand, the Netherworld Ruin sword appeared in his hand. He pointed it at the ground at an angle. A heart-palpitating energy slowly spread out, startling everyone who was nervous. What's wrong? Yuanshi asked anxiously. Something. After taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoshing held the giant sword. His body suddenly turned in a circle, and he slashed behind him. Suddenly, a purplish-black sword ray that was hundreds of feet long shot out like a crescent moon, drawing a long gully in the ground. At the same time, there was a heavy collision sound. Hearing that dull sound, Mo Yunhua turned around abruptly, only to see a cluster of golden particles dissipating in the air. The fog in front of him was even cut in half by the sword aura. Something has intruded into my domain. Yin Nuoshing finished speaking. All the information in Ling Hongjian's domain would be fed back to him, so he would know immediately if something came in. However, he didn't know what the cluster of disappearing particles was. After looking around and confirming that there was nothing unusual, Yin Nuoshing and the others walked unhurriedly. However, at this time, They were even more vigilant. Just now, that thing was so close to them, and even someone as strong as Mo Yunhua couldn't detect it. Who knew what other powerful things were here? After walking for a while, the ground became flat, and the fog gradually dissipated. Ling Hongjian's domain didn't seem to be suppressed here, and it suddenly expanded. The scene in front of them slowly became clear. They could see a huge dark mountain in front of them. At the top of the mountain was a crack, and golden liquid was constantly flowing out of the crack. It flowed down the mountain wall and condensed into a huge golden lake in front of Yin Nuoxing and the others. The bright golden light shone on their faces, and it was a little dazzling. It took them a long time to adapt to it. Holy water of light. The moment they opened their eyes, they heard the exclamations of Mo Yunhua and Yuan Shi. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. She quickly looked over and saw the bright golden lake. She couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Holy water of light gathered the most brilliant light in the world. It was formed in the depths of the earth and flowed out from the spring. It was one of the few divine materials with light elemental energy. It was ranked at the 10th level, but the production was very low. It was considered good if there was a bowl of holy water flowing out from each spring, but here there was a whole lake. We're rich. At the same time, these 3 words flashed in their minds. After the radiant holy water dissolves the opposite energy around it, we should be able to pass through here. Then let's find a place to sit down and rest. In any case, there are still other people who haven't come yet. Hearing this, Mo Yinhua smiled and jumped onto a relatively smooth rock at the side and sat down. Looking at the distant sky, he seemed to have seen through something. Yes, Yin Nuoxing nodded. If the radiant holy water really appeared in the world, it would cause a huge commotion. At that time, there would definitely be other people coming in. Not to mention other people, those who had already reserved it would definitely be nearby. They could only seize a certain opportunity. After thinking about it, Yin Nuoxing could only give up on the idea of seeing it first. Jumping onto the rock, he sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Yuan Shi and Zian did not say anything. They also jumped onto the rock and sat down. Time passed quickly. As time passed, Yin Nuoxing discovered that even the fog behind them was gradually dissipating. The darkness in the sky spread out along with the disappearance of the fog. Even the sun could not pierce through the darkness here. Gradually, after the fog dissipated, someone discovered this place and spread the news immediately. Yin Nuoxing and the others were covered by Ling Hongjian's enchantment. Outsiders could not see them, but they could clearly see that group of people rushing in by accident and then running out in a panic. And for them to be able to come in, it was likely that the danger on the road had already disappeared. The only thing left was the matter in front of them. However, after waiting for half a day, they did not see any good changes on the road to the Radiant Lake. During this time, Yin Nuoxing casually threw a stone in. Seeing that the stone turned into a pool of water under his eyes, he calmly sat back and calmly began to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. 2 days ago, the news came back to the city. As expected, it caused a sensation. The elders of the forces in the city were a little conflicted at this time. They wanted to move, but they were afraid that they would end up losing everything. If they did not go, they would be letting down the sacrifices they had made in attacking the restricted area. After thinking about it, they could not come up with a good result. They could only report this matter to their respective leaders. In the span of 2 days, the news of the appearance of the Holy Radiant Spring spread throughout the entire Taiyuan region as if it had grown wings and rapidly spread to the other 4 regions. Although there were only 2 Yus who could control the light element in this world, Yin Nuoxing and Yao Hua, this didn't matter. This kind of divine material would be of great help to either artifact forging or cultivation. It was even to the extent that if one wanted to contain the light element in one's body, it would also be of great help. The one with the biggest movement was the Light Temple. Although there were only 100 people in the Light Temple, each of them possessed the light element. The Holy Spring of Light was of great significance to them. If they could get their hands on it, the strength of the light temple would double again. That, Elder, is it okay if I don't go? A group of bright, white palaces floated in the clouds. In the center of the main hall, an elegant young man in white clothes had a bitter smile on his face. He looked at the back of an old man in front of him and asked carefully. The old man looked out of the hall, his white eyes carrying some peace and tranquility. When he heard the young man's words, he slowly turned around. In an instant, the peace in his eyes faded and was replaced by a fierceness that no one dared to resist. He stared at the young man and slowly asked, "Why?" After being glared at by the old man, the young man smiled bitterly and said, "That little brother Nwashing must be there too. I don't really want to see him. What? Are you two having a conflict? Did you provoke him, or did he provoke you?" The old man took a light breath, his wrinkles trembling slightly as he asked. "No." Yao Hua smiled bitterly and said, "It's just that every time I see him, he looks at me with such hatred, it's a little uncomfortable. If we don't see each other for a long time, maybe everything will be fine?" When the old man heard this, he was silent for a long time. He turned his head and looked at the white clouds outside, as if he was thinking about something. Seeing him like this, Yao Hua didn't dare to ask any more questions and could only stand there like a log. After a long time, the old man turned his head and stared at Yao Hua, saying, "I've seen that little guy. He's very powerful. I can feel that he has an extraordinary fate. From the moment he was born, he was bound to our 9 shrines. He's one of us. I think he'll understand. I'll let you get in touch with him, because I want you to be on good terms with him. Only young people can talk to each other. After all, he wasn't born in the shrines. As long as you don't have any conflicts, everything else is fine." Yao Hua didn't understand what the old man was trying to say. He could only smile bitterly and ask, "So, you think, what's the point of talking about such a trivial matter? Old Jean, I'll leave this fool to you." Suddenly, the old man blew his beard and glared at him. He lifted Yao Hua up and threw him towards the entrance of the hall with all his might. Yao Hua was stunned for a long time when he was thrown to the door by the old man like trash. Then, he screamed at the top of his lungs, "Ah, save me. I don't want to go." Before he finished speaking, the closed door suddenly opened with a bang. The sunlight elongated a dozen shadows. The person in the lead was wearing a golden robe. It was Jin Wang and the others. When they heard the old man shout, they opened the door. When they saw Yao Hua flying out like a cannonball, they all laughed out loud. Jin Wang caught Yao Hua in his hand and saw his depressed look. He couldn't help but laugh. "See, I told you that this kid's resistance would be futile. Boss, don't worry, we're here. It's okay, little star won't eat you." Mu Ling covered her mouth and laughed. When they heard the news, they all gathered at the light temple. When they came to the door of the main hall, they heard Yao Hua's voice of resistance. They were discussing with Lei Ming and the others whether Yao Hua could successfully resist or not. "Ah, I don't want to. I want to defy the heavens." Hearing this, Yao Hua roared in grief and indignation. Bright light elements broke out of his body. However, before he could turn into a ray of light and rush out, an old hand gently pressed on his head, making him shudder violently. The light elements rolled back into his body like a mouse seeing a cat. "What do you want to defy?" The old man looked at the dejected Yao Hua and asked indifferently. Yao Hua wanted to cry, but he couldn't. Under the amused gazes of the dozen people, he cried and nodded, saying, "I want to go against the flow to the ghost forest." In the end, he still gave up. Jin Wang and the others laughed, making his expression even more bitter. Time quickly turned a page. In the ghost forest, in front of the light lake, Yun Nuashing, who was sitting cross-legged on a rock, suddenly opened her eyes. For days had passed, and the evil aura here had weakened a lot. If she used Ling Hong's sword now, she could forcefully pass through. Mo Yunhua and the others, who felt the same, also opened their eyes and looked at her. Wait a little longer. Feeling their gazes, Yun Nuashing blinked but didn't act immediately. Although the evil aura had weakened a lot by the light lake, there was still a lot of it in the air. If she was careless, she would still be in trouble. In the past few days, many people had visited here. Many people couldn't wait to rush over, but they turned into a pool of black water on the spot before they could even make a sound. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts turned cold. They didn't take another step forward. Just like Yin and the others, they stopped outside. However, she hadn't seen anyone from the Chi family yet. This made her puzzled. This group of people who had their eyes opened when they saw treasures were never late. Why was it that this time, when the new moon fell and the sun rose to the top of the sky again, Yin stood up? Seeing her move, Mo Yinhua and Yuan, she also stood up and looked at the light lake 10 miles away. Not only could the former see it, but the latter and the others also felt that it seemed to be safer here. Let's go. It's about time. Same as before, don't leave the domain. Yin stretched his body and cracked his knuckles. He turned his head and said to the others. Then, he jumped down from the rock and walked quickly towards the Lake of Light. Behind him, the others quickly followed. Although Ling Hongjin's domain was present, there was still a bit of an ominous aura lingering here. Now that they weren't completely safe, they didn't dare to be careless. They were afraid that they would step into the wrong place. The others who were still waiting here also moved. Not long after Yin and the others moved, they also moved. They couldn't see Yin and the others, but they could feel that the aura around them was much calmer. In the distance, the people from the Qi clan, the Qinghai Palace, and the 12-star palaces, who hadn't shown up for a long time, all appeared. Countless strong cultivators covered the sky and earth. They didn't have a divine weapon like Yin, but they had their own way of crossing the barrier. Many strong cultivators joined forces and propped up an energy barrier. They resisted the pressure and rushed in. Unsurprisingly, the leader of the Qi clan was Qiyu. However, this time, only he, Qi1, and Qi Haoyu came. The others didn't know if they didn't come or if they were hiding in the dark. However, a strong cultivator of the Emperor of the Underworld and a strong cultivator of the King of the Underworld were already enough to exert great mental pressure on everyone present. Qiyu, seeing them fly by, Yin sighed deeply. As expected, the Qi clan had sent a strong cultivator of the Emperor of the Underworld. Moreover, as far as the eye could see, the Qi clan had brought the least people, but they were the strongest. The mid-level Emperor of the Hell from the Qinghai Palace didn't come either. Only some godly emperors and gods of the divine realm came. Oh, Mo Yin has followed them. Mo Yinhua looked behind him and saw the green-clothed young man and the white-clothed man. Mo Yinhua frowned a little. Although he had left early that day, Guanqiu's words had reached his ears. Them? Asked Yin Nuoxing. Not everyone in the alliance agreed to ignore you. That person is one of the people who objected. Like many others, he also covets the spiritual godly body. Although I told him not to get involved in this muddy water, it seems that it's useless. He's not much weaker than me, said Mo Yinhua strangely, scratching his beard. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.